Are you ready? Sorry. Okay, we're going to call the Star City Council meeting to order. It's Tuesday, July 20th, 2021, 7 p.m. I'd like to ask all of you to please stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You guys did that very well. That was awesome. Thank you. We're going to have our invocation tonight by Mr. Joe Carson. You go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, for the invitation and for encouraging us to pray. We read in the first few statements in Genesis that in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness, and he called the light day, and the darkness night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. And the example that we can take from that among many is that as his creation, as we who bear his image, we are called to do in like fashion, similar to our Creator. We are called to bring order to chaos. We are called to bring form to that which is abstract. We are called to bring fruitfulness to that which is void. And finally, we're called to bring light to darkness. And so might we consider that and bear the image of our Creator into this meeting this evening. Join me in prayer, please. Father, we thank you for allowing us to be stewards of your creation. And Father, we thank you for Jesus Christ, the express image of your person. And we thank you that while we were yet without strength, you sent him to die for us. And we thank you for his death, his burial, his resurrection. And Father, we pray that you would grant all those who are present tonight to undertake ultimately what is your business, that you would grant them the strength to bring order to chaos, to bring form to that which is abstract, to bring light to darkness, and to bring fruitfulness to that which is void. We thank you again in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Carson. Roll call.
Hershey. Present. Keys.
Here.
Chadwick.
Here.
Salmonson.
Here.
Nielsen.
Present.
Okay, all is present. Before we move on to presentations, just a couple quick items. I'm going to move up the committee reports to after the presentation, just so they don't have to wait all night for those committee reports. We do have several public hearings that are going to be tabled on here. We have the Stargazer subdivision, Landon Village, and East Star River Ranch that will be tabled. We're having some challenges getting all of our reports back. I believe it's ACHD we're waiting on those. The reconsideration for Cranefield subdivision is going to be removed as well and moved to August 3rd. It was inadvertently removed and posted yesterday on the agenda, so we need to make certain that it's posted correctly. So on August 3rd, we're going to hear that. And then item J, the ordinance 339, amending the salary of the mayor, is going to be tabled to August 3rd because that should have been on with our public hearing night for the budget hearing. With that said, we're going to move on to Mr. Carl with Compass. They got an exciting new tool that will be available, I hope, for the city. And I think, do you have the little clicker there?
I think so.
And I will start this from the beginning.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. My name is Carl Miller. I'm with Compass, 700 Northeast 2nd Street, Meridian. I'm really excited to show you the new Compass Fiscal Impact tool. This is something that we've been working on for a little while, and we think that it can help to answer a lot of the questions that we have regarding all the growth that we're having in the Valley lately. First, I'd like to just have you consider a few questions that I have for you as I give the rest of the presentation. But first, think about if a new subdivision is approved in the city of Star, could you afford the services that would be required? How do you know if your comprehensive plan is financially viable? And what is the financial impact of House Bill 389? Can you answer any of these questions right now? Compass is, well, first of all, I'm going to talk about who Compass is, give you an introduction to the fiscal impact tool, tell you a little bit of how we'll be using this tool to report information to you and make it available to your staff so that you can run different analysis and do different considerations about land use and the financial impact on land use decisions. And then I'll save some time for Q&A at the end. I'll talk fast. I got a lot of things to cover, but it looks like you have a full room here. So I'll go through this fairly quickly. First of all, though, Compass is the Community Planning Association of Southwest Idaho. We cover Ada and Canyon County. Our main product is our long-range transportation plan, Communities in Motion, which really establishes the vision and our prioritization for transportation projects for the two-county area. Compass is the Metropolitan Planning Organization, but we also work as a council of governments, which means that as there's regional issues that we need to collaborate on, we provide the forum for that. And as the leaders in the valley bring together those issues and those concerns, we work towards solutions for that. And one of the concerns that came out a few years back was we're growing fast. We anticipate there'll be almost 1.1 million people by the year 2050. What does that mean? Are we going to be able to handle all that new growth? And so we started working on a fiscal impact tool. Basically, a fiscal impact at the bare minimum are the revenues that we're receiving going to outweigh the expenditures that we're going to be burdened with new development? And if so, that there's a positive fiscal impact. If not, there's a negative fiscal impact. A lot went into the fiscal impact tool. We worked with your staff on identifying service areas, which areas are currently served with infrastructure as well as services, which areas would require additional services. And when I say yours, I'm also referring to the highway district, the school district, Idaho Transportation Department, Valley Regional Transit, and many others to say how do we identify which areas can be served and which areas would require additional infrastructure and services. We looked at your budget and capital plans to identify what are those needs that you have for the future and how could new growth either benefit or be accommodated by those needs. We looked at your new development plans. We looked at what is the average cost of new housing, and how much of that would be generated in impact fees or property taxes, and then as well as the expenditure side, how much will it cost to send out new fire, new police, new roads, new services. And then we have a Excel macro worksheet that we use to input data, and I'll give you a couple screenshots of that. But we're also working on a web-based tool for that. So we'll give it to your staff so you can run analysis as well. Yes, please.
Sorry, I don't mean, so we're going to be, so this is not going to be a tool specifically that you're going to send us data. We're going to be able to input the information ourselves to get immediate data, right?
Yes,
Okay,
so the tool right now is hosted at Compass, and it's a spreadsheet. And please do ask any questions that you have. We'll host the spreadsheet. We'll report along with our development checklist that you've probably seen a few times in the last month. We'll also include an evaluation of the fiscal impact of new growth. But we'll also make the web-based tool available to your staff. The difference will be we'll provide you, it's a pretty robust Excel spreadsheet. We'll kind of tuck away a lot of the tables that you don't need to change. You know, the budgeting tables, the input tables, the demographic tables. So that way yours is just simple and ready to go. But yeah, you'll be able to run analysis at your heart's content. And just to cover the services evaluated, we're really talking about everything under the sun that the public budgets cover, from transportation to schools to safety and emergency services, parks and recreation administration. We have over 150 different tabs that reflect the different services that public agencies are responsible for. And all those are input into this tool. A couple of things, a couple disclaimers maybe, what it's not an economic impact tool. So this wouldn't be an appropriate tool to say a new firm comes in, what would be the spillover? You know, now we have to have restaurants and, you know, retail to compensate, or how many new jobs. We're just saying, if this new development get approved, what would be the financial impact on the city, the county, the highway districts, and so forth. It's a model, it's a tool. So, I mean, every tool is based on assumptions, your budget, demographic data that we get from the census and other things like that. So it does require regular care and feeding, as well as good information put into the tool to get good information out of it. And it's really should be considered one factor in the whole development process. I know you've, as you put together your comprehensive plan, you have a list of goals and objectives that you'd like to see. Obviously, financial sustainability is one of those, but it's still just one. I know that affordable housing could be one where maybe the numbers don't crunch, but it's still a good thing for the city. Or I know the city of Boulder was finding that every time they got a new restaurant, it wouldn't pencil, and yet it was still important to their travel and tourism industry. And so it's one factor out of many. So just a couple things about how to input information. We talked about different service areas. We've divided up the 2-county area into over 100 different service areas to really get into granular information about how one side of the city would require different services and different infrastructure than others. So it's very finite. A lot of times when people do these fiscal impacts, they do kind of high level, which is fine, and it gives good general information, but we really wanted to get down to, you know, west side of the city, north side of the city, east side. How are those different growth areas, how would those impact the city in different ways? As far as this, you would put in as far as the scenario inputs, you would put in the different development type, residential, non-residential. We have about a dozen or so different residential types and about 24 different non-residential types. So you can be very specific with the development proposal that you're seeing, or as you update your comprehensive plan, or you want to do sub-area analysis, we can be very, very specific with that. And then each different area has different input factors. This is a screenshot of the Boise North service area, but we've done analysis on how many new people, how many new students, what's the amount of vehicle miles traveled, so what's the burden on the road system, how many law enforcement calls are generated by a single family or a townhome or a restaurant or a big box retail. So all those things are factored into the tool. We will report these things to you with the development checklist. So Compass uses this checklist as far as anytime we have a larger development, about 50 homes or more, you'll see this development checklist. We'll provide this to your planning and zoning as well as city council, but you'll see that we can break that down between revenues and expenditures, how the city differs from the county as far as a different scenario goes, the impact on school district, highway districts, Valley Regional Transit, and more. This example is for CUNA, say a grocery store and a 50 multifamily apartment. And it comes with charts and graphs as well, so you can see at what point are you going to break even? Is this going to take, you know, you're going to be in the black right away, or is this going to be a number of years before you see enough revenue coming through this? So like I mentioned, we have our development checklist that we provide. We're updating the format to include this fiscal impact analysis. We haven't quite decided on the format yet of this, but we're working with our public outreach work group to make sure that this is user-friendly and really speaks to your planning and zoning as well as city council, gives you good information and really concise, easy to read information. But we'll indicate with the fiscal impact analysis, whether are there benefits to the city or the county or school districts, and how many years it will take to break even. Yeah, please.
Will you go backwards for me real quick to the graph or to that chart right? No, I'm sorry, the chart right there. So does Compass have, are they going to set any sort of guidelines, or is it up to the district to figure out stuff regarding break even year, right? Like in this one here, you have the city's break evens in year 1 all the way down the highway. It's year 5 before it breaks even. I mean, are we going to have some sort of guidelines or standards that we're going to live to or want to live to, or?
Great question, Mayor. We're working with our public participation work group. So it's representatives of each of the communities in the Valley to actually have a meeting tomorrow to show them this format. Ultimately, the decision is yours, but we are looking for feedback, and I'd be happy to take feedback at this point from the group about, is that information that you would like, and how do we convey that information to you? Usually, generally within 5 years is a good thing. If it takes 5 to 15, you know, that's, you know, not as good. And if it never breaks even, obviously that's a bad thing. I'm just going to jump ahead to a couple of slides just to show you. I apologize, it's a little difficult to see, but the screenshot on the right shows the green, yellow, and red icons. We use those same icons in our change in motion report, which is a report that we do every other year across a number of different variables and performance metrics in the Valley, from congestion to active transportation to transit, farmland preservation. We use those same icons, so we thought it would tie back to that rather than you getting, Mayor, that report every other year and going, okay, well, we're doing well at certain things and failing at others. You'll get a constant reminder with those same kind of icons.
Okay, thank you.
So House Bill 389 obviously is a big change to our budgeting, and some of the things that we actually got this just days before we were wrapping up the project. We were able to reflect a lot of House Bill 389 in the tool that we built, such as the limitation on construction as well as the homeowner exemption. We made those changes. Other things like the property tax increase cannot exceed 8% or levying authority really are based on what the decisions you're gonna do with your next budget. So we will reflect that in the next update that we do to the fiscal impact tool. So we are aware of 389 and we made some adjustments to that, but a lot of it will be kind of a give and take, which kind of leads to my next point is you see this guy from Super Size Me. I put this in there for two different reasons. One is the tool will take some care and feeding. We'll need to update that. We'll want to make sure your latest budgets are reflected in the tool. So we will be working with your staff on a regular basis, probably annually, to make sure that your budget is in there and any changes gets reflected in the next update to the tool. But second, I've given you a lot to digest. So I think my time might be at hand, but I wanted to save some time for questions and answers and just share with you what our tool is. But kind of in conclusion, we feel like this is a new tool that will really help us to have information that we've never had before about what is the impact financially on land use decisions. And I think that's something that we've all really have been lacking and really will help elevate the level of conversation in the Valley.
Yeah, any questions? Mr. Carl?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys?
so first of all, Mr. Miller, welcome to STAR. It's really, as always, it's really good to work with you. So this tool, it needs to be updated. You said we need to do some care and feeding. So if we adopt a new capital improvement plan, for instance, how long does it take to get that integrated back into the model? Is it something that we send you and it's done in a week, or is it something you update it quarterly, or how will that work?
We're looking at annual updates to the tool. If there are groundbreaking like HB 389, that may cause us to need to update it right after the fact. So we do have flexibility to update it as needed. It does require our consultants who helped us build this. So we would have to take that to our Compass board. But seeing the importance of this, they've been really good about making sure that we have resources to update this tool as needed. So the answer is we're planning to update this on an annual basis, but it can be adjusted.
Okay. Another question is, STAR's been interested, or at least I've been interested in exploring implementing an adequate public facilities ordinance, but we've always been stymied by our transportation departments in terms of getting data. Is this something that you think we might be able to use as a basis to put together an adequate public facilities ordinance?
Yeah, it's certainly a good first step. I mean, obviously this doesn't get you all the way there, but it provides the information that you would need. And for really the first time, we've collected all these budgets and compiled them into one resource. So it can be great just that we have all that information at our hands, as well as we can run analysis scenarios based on that. So yeah, Compass is more than happy to contribute with that, help out with any development of a PFO that you do. But yeah, this does have a lot of that background material that you would need.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Chadwick.
Councilman?
So I was going to ask a question. You alluded to, you had some consultants. What are the credentials of the organization or the individuals that put this together? How do we know this data is good?
Great question, Councilmember Nielsen. So we worked with Tischler Weiss. They're a consulting agency headquartered out of DC. I found out about Fiscal Impact at an American Planning Association conference about 10 or 12 years ago, as with the presenter was Carson Weiss, the principal there. So they're probably the main consultant for fiscal impact analysis. As you do Google searches, their name pops up more than any other. They headquarters in DC, but they actually had staff move to Boise because they were seeing all the work that was happening in the Intermountain West. I would say that they're probably the most reputable firm that I've seen for fiscal impact analysis.
And thank you for that. As you've alluded to, we've got traffic in here, we've got other agencies. Are we to understand then that our traffic agencies know what their costs are on a per lot or a per person basis? Is that a requirement for this, or is that kind of an estimate that's contained within this as well? And a little bit of background into that question. I know that as we've had conversations with Ada County and ACHD and others, they don't understand the true impact of growth on their own budgets. And so if they don't understand that, how much of this is assumptions and estimations versus this is really what your fiscal impact is going to be?
Yeah, good question, council member. It is a tool based on estimates. Although all the data behind that comes from, the amount of vehicle miles traveled comes from our household travel survey, which we do every 5 or 6 years at Compass. We survey thousands of people, and we use that information to estimate different impact that you would have on transportation. We sat down with ACHD, Idaho Transportation Department, Valley Regional Transit, and others. From schools, we not only got demographic data from Census Bureau and others, but we also met with the school district. So we really vetted this in a lot of different arenas. At the end of the day, it is an estimate. I mean, there's no way to say exactly how many, the dollar amount to the penny of each new lot that's developed in the side of the city. But this would be as close as you would ever get.
And I think it's important for
Hey,
us.
Councilman Nielsen, sorry. Will you pull your mic? I'm getting told that you can't be heard. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I think it's important for folks to hear those kind of things, because the first thing that will happen, I think, is we'll see numbers, and numbers tend to feel concrete.
Mhm.
And this isn't. Like you said, it's about as good as we're going to get, and it's way better than anything that we have currently. At least that's the sense that I get. But I do feel like we should be cautionary about this too, because when it comes right down to it, Valley Regional Transit doesn't even get a state budget. They're mandated by the state, but they've got nothing to work with. And so fiscal impact, how do you reconcile those things in there? And I don't quite understand how we can ever really get to the does it break even answer when we haven't funded those things, and when ACHD and ITD are $300 million in the deficit on projects that need to be done and things like that. So speaking of that, does it take into consideration things that we're behind and need to catch up with, or is it just where things are at today and moving ahead?
It focuses on where we're at today and moving ahead. We know that there's a maintenance deficit, but it look at the amount of capital needed to keep the existing service levels. So with school, with highways, with police and fire, we just say, if this is the existing service levels, what would it take to keep those levels up? And Mayor and Council Member, if you don't mind me just kind of pointing to this chart again, you made a great point. You get into the dollars, it looks very specific and exact. And it is a model, it is a tool. One of the reasons I think we're going to go with icons and years of a break even is just because of that point. We don't want 95,000 of revenue to feel like so much better than 94,000 in revenue. It's general, and nor is a 200 lot subdivision twice as good as a 100 lot subdivision of the same size. We want to make sure that you see that things are moving in the right direction or not, some general attitudes toward that and preferences. So I agree that we probably won't share in our reports the exact dollar amount, but we'll make that available and transparent for those that are interested.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hershey?
I didn't see you turn on, sorry. Just a quick question. It goes kind of along the lines of Councilman Nielsen's questions. When I was looking at the graph that showed the city and all the projects, that would be that one, yes. It says the highway impacts, highway revenue, operating costs, and capital costs. is this taking in consideration, how am I going to say this? ACHD has dedicated projects that they have committed to funding. And the impact on some of those is directly more effective of STAR than say Boise or Meridian. Does this tool take that into consideration when it's doing the evaluation, that there are funded project areas or there are not? Or is it back to the, ACHD has to be the one that accurately reports to let this tool be more accurate?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Hershey, we have put in the capital improvement plan from ACHD, so it will indicate where there is available capacity and where we've exceeded that. So a large subdivision that goes beyond those capacity needs will show up as additional expenditures. Similar with the school districts, if a new subdivision was approved and there was no school in that, if there was a new school, there would be very little expenditures on that side. But if there was, a new large subdivision that required additional infrastructure like a new school, it would show that that gap between where we're at and where we need to be.
And just to follow up on that, how long has this tool been around? You mentioned Boulder, Colorado, so I figure it's had some use, it's had some history.
So our consultant Tischler Bice customized this for our area. In fact, one of the unique things about it is typically they'll do one city, and this looked at the entire Treasure Valley. So benefits to that is they got to see the interplay between the different agencies that we have here, and how that's why we split up the map in such granular fashion. Is there's a lot of areas that can be served by one community, but maybe a different agency has difficulty serving that. So they usually do one city at a time. They've been doing this for, I'm going to guess over 20 years. I know that there's dozens of fiscal impact tools in other communities that they've done. None are like this. They can't just copy another model that they've done and change names. They actually have to do quite a bit of customization for our area.
So in those 20 years, you might be able to answer this, but with that type of development of a tool that obviously statistical modeling takes into account outliers, and obviously the good in, good out is important. Is there any anomalies that they've identified that we need to be on the lookout for if we are using this tool, as in inaccuracies? Because just like it was said, well, you want someone to believe it, just put it in a chart and show it up on the screen, and boy, that is real.
Yeah, good question, Mayor, Council. Could you rephrase the question? Is it, can you just say that one more time, just so I make sure I'm answering your question right?
If I don't think the data is correct, how can I validate it?
Okay. And you mentioned where do these go wrong?
Right, basically.
Before we started this project, I talked with other metropolitan organizations across the valley, across the country, kind of asked that same question. Is this worth doing? What are going to be the results? What goes wrong? And the most common thing that goes wrong, and I didn't get into the methodology too much, but is that people will do an average cost. And they'll say a home in a city anywhere will cost X amount. And we didn't want to get into that issue. So we really did a lot of marginal cost analysis. A home where there's already schools, where there's already roads, will have a much different cost and revenues than one that goes somewhere else. So a lot of that marginal cost takes care of the issue about credibility with the data. That's where most people go wrong, is they take the fast approach to fiscal impact modeling. The other one that other MPOs mentioned is, like I pointed out, it becomes the default tool for if it pencils, let's approve it. And, all the other goals and objectives can be pushed aside. That was the other thing that I was cautioned against. But as far as credibility of the data, I mean, it's based on your budgets, your information, met with your staff, vetted this through a stakeholder group. So everything in here is really reflecting the information that you have already approved and have it reflects your information. So I think as we run these, and we will provide information to you, we do want to make sure this is kept up and fair, and we take care of it and feed it. So we will make adjustments as necessary. For us, it's been live for about 2 weeks now. So it's hot off the shelf, brand new, and we're excited to share it with people. And we feel confident with this just because the consultant that we've had has built so many of these and has had so much success nationwide.
Thank you.
Okay, when can we start using this, Carl? Can we, tomorrow?
Pretty soon. We are QCing that web-based tool.
Okay.
And as soon as we kind of work through the functionality and make sure it's user-friendly, we'll share it with your staff. We'll start providing these in those development checklists. I really wanted to give kind of an overview of these to you first, but then we'll start providing these in the next development proposals that you see.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Chadwick.
Councilman Keys first, sorry. I cut him off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 or 3 years ago, Ada County, the Ada County Commission was looking at doing a tool like this. Was this an outgrowth of that effort? Are they still working on that? Is that?
This is it.
This is it. Okay, perfect. And then I know that there are some people who seem to be, I think, confused by some of the numbers you published. So you mentioned early on that we're looking at a future forecast of 1.1 million people in the valley. And so when we look at your documents, let's say your 2040 plan, your 2050 plan, and it talks about this percentage of growth and this many people and whatnot, should those be considered to be growth caps or growth targets? Or can you tell us what those numbers are intended to be?
Sure, excellent question. Mayor, Councilmember Keys, as we develop our regional long-range transportation plan, we're required by FHWA to do that every 4 years. One of the first steps and that foundational step is a demographic analysis, forecast, and allocation. So that way we can do all the additional analysis based on that. Our travel demand model, which looks at how much volume, what are the speeds on the road going to be 10, 20, 30 years from now. It really depends on that. And to do that, you really do need a discrete number. We've done analysis about how big a range the Treasure Valley would be, but to do any of that statistical modeling, you do need a discrete number. Based on feedback that we got from our demographic advisory work group made up of city staff, development community, and a few others, we looked at a lot of in-migration to the valley, but also a very drastically declining birth rate. And so based on the numbers that we crunched, we got to about 1.1 million people by 2050. So that's what we use. We allocate that across the valley, and that helps us with doing all that statistical and all that transportation analysis from here.
So that is or is not considered to be a growth cap or a growth target?
Well, it's for our analysis, it's the number that we're using. It does in no way caps the amount of growth that our cities can approve. It could exceed that. We on an annual basis adjust and reallocate based on new growth that's occurring. It doesn't limit your ability to do anything.
Okay, so we should look at that as a forecast.
It's a forecast, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Nielsen?
Thank you. So talk about roadmap for this tool, if we can, for a second. Were there options that this organization gave us that we didn't that we didn't take? Features or capabilities for the tool?
We worked with your staff from the beginning on this, and there's, obviously we customized this kind of from the ground up. So there's a lot of different options about how we could have gone about this. One of the main was the map that I showed you about those service areas. That's a main determinant for the results that we get. But working with your planning staff and other school districts, highway districts, that was developed based on the feedback we got from that, and we feel very confident with that. If in the future we want to make any of those changes, we can. But those were some of the decision points that we hit along the way.
So being a tool that's based in Excel, I think Councilman Hershey mentioned it's a statistical model. There's not a lot of opportunity for say machine learning or artificial intelligence type modeling or data science. As we grow into this, are we going to be collecting actual numbers and not just working with estimated, forecasts? and collecting those actuals so that we get a database over time that we would be able to start doing some machine learning and self retrospective, I guess you could say, 5 to 10 years from now. Has there been any sort of talk or consideration for that?
Mayor, Councilmember Nielsen, that's a really good question. A lot of the data that we get on, that we plug into the tool is based on localized surveys. So the household travel survey, they give everybody a sheet of paper or a app on their phone, and they track the different trips they make over a month period. So it's survey level. The schools provide us with, maybe I'll give you an example of the police. They give us data on where their calls are to different types of land uses. And then we generate, an average, a statistical mean of how many different trips are based on, a shopping center versus a residential neighborhood. So a lot of it's based on that kind of information. A lot of the machine learning is kind of what we're going to start seeing as far as in the transportation and land use planning world down the road, as far as, trips made through Strava or some, other information, that big data. We're probably several years away from that. But I think you can be very confident that the data that we got is based on the very best information that our public agencies have. Our police and fire provide us information based on the trips they actually made.
And I think you're right in that. I guess what I'm looking more for or wondering more about is how do we know that our forecasts are accurate, and how do we improve those? And what sorts of questions should we be asking that we don't even know about today? And so over time, I mean, we're going to start out, and this is the best that we've got right now, right? But 5 years from now, we should be able to look back and start seeing whether those forecasts were accurate or how targeted they were, and be able to start then making adjustments. And so I think that's my concern's not the right word, because I'm not concerned about it, but I guess hope is a better word. It's my hope that we would start to build our own data set and not just rely on all these other data sets, which, as you've said here tonight, are good. I mean, our police trips are accurate, that's data that you can count on, but our own statistical models, we don't know the integrity of those yet.
Mayor and council member, that's a phenomenal question, and it's one I'm going to think about.
Sure.
It's also, we do have our Regional Transportation Advisory Committee. Mr. Nichols sits on that, right? Yeah, okay, that's, but we'll be bringing updates to that group, and as we find that there's better data sources or next level, next generation data sources, we'd be happy to consider those things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow, good exchange. Any other questions? That went quite a bit longer than your 15. Well, I appreciate you for coming out here, Carl,
Mr. Miller.
on that, and we are looking forward to utilizing the tool.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Let me get your,
Thank you.
you want your, you don't, unless you want to sit around all night. Which one is yours?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on, as I stated earlier, to our committee reports and get those done and out of the way. So we'll have the Mayor's Youth Committee go first.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth, and I'm the treasurer of Mayor's Youth Council. So I first want to start off by saying thank you so much for all the donations and all the promoting that the city and all of our sponsors have given us, because without you, none of this would have been possible. So for our total sales profit for this last quarter, which includes Saturday markets, the 4th of July festivities, and all the other sales and donations, we made $11,829. And we sold over 1,500 raffle tickets and 157 hats. And our upcoming events next are the 31st, the Star Summer Roundup. And we have more evening concerts and Saturday markets where we will be selling more hats and shirts. And water bottles, and I think picnic blankets too.
Nice job. I think that's the most ever, right?
Yeah.
By far.
Yeah, by like triple or quadruple.
Yeah, so nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Matt?
Mr. Mayor and Council, thanks so much for having me moving this up tonight. Looking forward to listening. That being said, get right into it. So we met yesterday, and it was an awesome meeting. We went over quite a few things. Currently, we're working on updating the park section of our comprehensive plan. And Jennifer has provided a really great outline about where some future parks should be laid and where, we're reworking the entire thing. And so far, it's going really, really well. Overall, I would say that it's coming along, and at next committee meeting, I think we'll vote to send it to you all with our stamp of recommendation. So hopefully you guys can improve it just to make it a little more concise, user-friendly, and maybe a little more clear. So the next item of business that we were working on is the utility box wraps. And I'm happy to report that we should have the private funding available to get those things wrapped. We're currently working with the companies to gain those permissions, but in the long run, we should have no problem gaining the community support and getting those things wrapped from private donations instead of asking the public for donations, or excuse me, instead of asking it as a budget line item. The next business item that we talked about and continue to work on is the Star Senior Center mural. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go take a peek. It is coming along. Folks are taking pictures next to it. It's an interactive mural. It's one of the first of its kind here in town. And it is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Originally, a couple of friends of mine were like, why are you doing it? You're not going to be able to see it. But now beer guys will open up their gates and folks are going out and taking pictures with it and sharing it and loving it. So it's turned out really well. And I think Mary Ann Frazier wants to be done with it around the end of August, early September timeframe. So it's coming along real well. And just thanks for all your guidance and help on that. And we should be, I think the last bit we were working on was Jerry is going to be looking for some rocking chairs because we still have some donation dollars left over. So we want to put a couple rocking chairs out in front of the Star Senior Center. And so that's going real well. And so she's doing that with, again, donated dollars. On the 24th, Stacy and members of the Heron River community are going to be doing a barbed wire cleanup out behind the two ponds. Is that them? No.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be doing some cleanups behind the two ponds. Just trying to get that out, and they're going to be making sure they dispose of that over by the river house, out of the way.
So they're going to take down the barbed wire and the fence posts that they can,
Correct.
right?
Yes, sir. So that process is underway, and that's going to be happening on the 24th. We're currently looking for Q3 Service Award nominees. So if you have anybody in mind and we talked quite a bit about it last night, don't hesitate to shoot us a recommendation. Also, we have the date set for our third annual Make Stars Shine Day, and that is the November the 13th. And so again, we will, for those of you guys that don't know, it is a rake effort, cleanup effort in town, and we do a heck of a job, and it's gotten bigger and better every single year, and I expect this year is going to be awesome. So we're planning the process really early this year, and we look forward to continuing to do that. So keep your eyes and ears open. I'm open to any questions that you might have.
Any questions of Mr. Matt? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody from transportation?
Chair's not here, but I can give a quick summary.
Okay.
So Transportation Committee's been working on updating our eCamp map. We reviewed the changes that were recommended in the draft South of the River plan and are recommending changes to that. We're looking at changes based on some development that's come into the city, and also some changes based on your conversation with ITD. So you should expect that update here pretty quickly. They're working pretty urgently on reviewing the capital improvement plan for Canyon Highway District number 4's impact fee efforts, so they can have that in front of the council, or their recommendation or comments in front of the council in time for our public hearing on August 3rd. And I believe they're looking at scheduling a special meeting on the 28th to adopt that letter. I'll let you talk about what's going on with our proportionate share fees. So,
Okay. Activities Committee.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. Dana Partridge, Chair of the Activities Committee. I just wanted to give you a quick budget wrap up for the hometown celebration. In the past, the most we've ever raised was $8,000. And this year, thanks to the efforts of our mayor, we raised $45,000. And our budget, out of that, we spent $45,133. So this event only spent $100 of taxpayers' money for the first time. So congratulations to you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for doing that. And for all of you for being so active and participating in all the events. And I'm sorry, Councilwoman Salmonson, that you had to take a pie in the face, but you were a good sport about it. Thank you. And then I also want to announce the parade winners. I'd like to thank Hayden Homes for his sponsorship of the parade and for taking care of these prizes. The car group or the runner-up was Steve's Auto Care, and the winner was the Special Olympics car, and they will get $200. The animal group, runner-up was the Idaho Mini Horse Club, and the winner was Stephanie and Phaedra, the U.S. flag painted horse, and she will be the recipient of $300. For the floats, we had some, I just want to thank everybody who did floats. The floats are getting better and better every year. Fantastic floats this year. Third place was Jeremy's Pumpkins. Second place was the 2021 Miss Idaho Junior High. And first place was Hope Blooms Flowers and Things, florist out of Eagle. However, as you know, the owner, Dorothy Miller, is a star resident. So she is, and her team are the recipient of $1,000. And I've spoken to her and she plans to donate it to local star charities. So the winners will be able to pick up their checks on Friday. This week, we will be meeting with everyone involved in hometown planning for our recap and looking on ways that we can improve it for next year. This Friday, July 23rd, is our family movie night at the Star River House. We will be showing Tom and Jerry. August 13th is our next concert night, co-hosted by Switba. That's also at the River House, and the band will be Killabrew. That was the opening act of the kids' games that you might have remembered from hometown. August 21st is Swidba's rib contest. I've joined the board of Swidba and will be helping out where I can with the rib contest, possibly competing. So you know what, you all know I like to cook.
August 21st.
August 21st, yep. August 27th will be our final movie night at the city. We don't have a movie picked out yet. September 10th, we've added a concert night. The concerts are becoming very, very popular. We've had quite a few people out there. So we've added an additional concert night co-hosted by Swidba. And then September 18th is the Chamber's Chili Cook-Off, and the city is sponsoring at the Cayenne level, and I will be involved with helping with the vendors for that. So I stand for any questions.
Any questions of Ms. Dana? Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll move on to item 5, the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda consisting of item 5A, approval of claims provided and previously approved July 1st to July 15th, 2021. Item 5B, minutes of April 20th, 2021. And item 5D, final plats, Iron Mountain Estate subdivision.
Okay, we got a motion. We have a second. Nobody wants to second it?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
It's a little odd to not make a mention of 5C, but
Well, 5C had nothing in it.
Yeah, it's a placeholder.
for the
So,
record,
right.
I understand.
Yeah. Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Item 6A, the public hearing for the continuing public hearing for the Stargazer subdivision is going to be tabled to August 17th. So we need to have a motion to table that.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys,
I'd like to make a motion to table the public hearing for Stargazer subdivision to August 17th, 2021.
okay, we got a motion. We have a second.
Second.
We have a motion, second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
I
Okay, that motion carries. Any opposed, I guess? None, okay. Item 5B, public hearing for the Landon Village subdivision. We need to table it to a date specific by the council, and I'm going to have Sean, you want to talk about dates?
Mr. Mayor and Council, both item B and C need to be tabled out to the same date. Again, we're waiting for ECHD and ITD to wrap up their reports on the transportation so we can move forward with those public hearings. We've got a full slate for August 17th, so I would recommend we look at a possible special meeting to deal with these, possibly that following week of the 24th of August.
Is everybody available August 24th?
I will not be
You won't be here?
taking kids to school.
Oh, that's right. That's school time. Anybody else gonna have an issue?
It'll work for me.
I know, I gotta make sure that he doesn't have a fire travel.
I have no idea. The fires are a little bit bad this year, if you've
Right.
noticed.
Are you here?
I'm here.
Okay.
But I will make every effort to be here.
Okay, so we can do it with 3, right? Yeah. So so we have a motion to table this to August 24th.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys,
I'd like to make a motion to table the Landon Village subdivision and East Star River Ranch subdivision public hearings until August 24th, 2021.
okay, we got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. All right, we're going to be on the item 6D, the public hearing for the Rivermore subdivision. Oh, do we have a PowerPoint for this one? Oh, here we go. It's not pulling up.
On your desktop.
Oh, it was? Wonder if I killed it. Oh, right here. Okay, gotcha. All right. Thank you. So we're gonna open up the public hearing. I will, and I'm gonna ask the council if there's any ex parte contact or communication. The applicant will have up to 20 minutes to present their project. The council can ask the applicant questions and staff questions during that time frame. Public testimony will be 3 minutes per person. Those for the project will speak first. Those against will speak next, and those who are neither for or against and wish to speak to their project will speak. Council can ask the individual speaking follow-up questions that do not count towards their 3 minutes. The applicant will have about 10-minute rebuttal. The council can ask the applicant and staff questions. I will close the public hearing. And the council will deliberate with either a motion made to approve with conditions, deny, or table the application to a date certain in the future. I lost my train of thought here. Oh, Dana, do we have anybody sign up online? Nobody signed up online? Okay. All right, so I'm going to open this public hearing. It's 7:53. I'm going to open the public hearing. Does anybody have any ex parte communication or contact regarding this?
No, Mr. Mayor.
None.
Okay, hearing none, we'll have the applicant come up. And I'll get your slideshow started. I think there's a clicker right there.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Kevin Amar. My address is 1580 West Cayuse Creek Drive in Meridian, Idaho. I thank you this evening that you're here and we can present this Rivermore community to you. A little about Rivermore and where we started, how we got to where we are today, and where we see this project going in the future. So this project and the property that it sits on, I have been involved with or working on for the last, 7, 8 years. And it's been a time to try to evaluate what would be best for, what we think would be best for the property, for the subdivision. And in that time, there's been some changes to the property. There's been one pond dug. There's been some changes with Highway 16. And we see more changes, but we see all of these changes that have happened in the past only to enhance what we can see for the Rivermore community in the future. And I say Rivermore community for a reason. We Biltmore Company is a local company. We grew up here. born and raised in the Treasure Valley. Well, born in Salmon, but quickly relocated to the Treasure Valley. And so we see this as a project that really would be one that is indicative of what I remember as a kid and what I would hope for my children to have in a project like this. One of the things, as you can look at this first slide, when we first started with a layout, this is many iterations from the first layout. When we first started, we actually had lots right on Joplin Road and Stonebriar Road. This project in the past was actually a portion of the Stonebriar subdivision that never got developed. So it has some access rights and some other rights that we'll address shortly. But as part of that, when we did this, we thought, well, we can come in and come off of Joplin Road. But as we looked at this project, we really wanted this to be a community. As you come in, we didn't want to come in and immediately be in a subdivision where you immediately come in and there's houses and the development around you. We want you to be able to come home and drive into this nice manicured entryway that is gated. It will be a gated community with private roads, or we're proposing a gated community with private roads. And as you drive into the community, you'll cross the Phyllis, which is a year-round creek that will be enhanced and have pathways around it. And you'll immediately come to the community center. This project, oh, I should have a pointer, but I don't.
There's one on there.
Oh, look at that. So this project currently has this approximately 10-acre pond that is existing. It was dug a few years ago. The community center, as you come in off of Joplin, you drive and you wind through that manicured area. This is a large clubhouse. The clubhouse is more than just a clubhouse. It will have a fitness facility in it. It will have a large gathering area in it. It will have conference rooms in it. But then behind it, there's also a large pool and recreation area. There's a patio area. And then there's a big active beach area that can be used, because we see this pond, all of the ponds really, but this pond being the main activity pond for the subdivision, where people can go and utilize that pond for paddleboarding or canoeing or swimming, or we'll have a dock that will protrude into that pond so people can go and use that. All of these ponds that we propose in here will be non-motorized. We don't see any, and we won't allow any motorized vehicles on them, but they're certainly a usable pond. The next slide, if we look at how we planned this project with the comprehensive plan is in estate residential 1 to 3 units to the acre. Our density that we're proposing, it's an R2 zone, we're at 1.92 units to the acre. So we're well within that bounds, and we did that intentionally. We could have, if we would maximize our density to this, we could add another 140 units. The purpose of this subdivision for us wasn't to maximize the density, it was really to maximize the feeling of the subdivision and create something that not only is good for the immediate community of Star, but we also are right along Highway 16. So this is an enhancement corridor for Highway 16 that you will actually be able to see some of these ponds that we're digging. We will plant trees along Highway 16. There'll be a pathway along Highway 16, as well as the rest of the community that will really enhance the entrance into the city of Star. This project has, we say 2.6 miles of developed walking paths, but we're actually increasing the size of some of the sidewalks to try to make it a very walkable community. Some of them are in the front of the homes on the sidewalks, but all along, all around this first developed pond is a walking path, all along Highway 16, through the neighboring community, or through the neighborhood itself in the common areas, up to the clubhouse, in through the entrance and along Joplin. It will also have access down to the public lands that currently doesn't enjoy access, so people can easily access that within the community. So overall, we'll have that over 2.6 miles of walking paths, and those walking paths will be marked so people can use them more as an exercise facility. What we're seeing in communities in general for the people that we're building homes for. They want to come home and they want to be in a community. And I keep using the word community because they don't want to have to leave and go exercise. They don't want to have to leave and go somewhere else that is nice. They want to stay at home and they want to have these amenities that they have. And so throughout the walking paths in various locations, obviously we've talked about the community center, but we have a number of other locations with gazebos and reflection areas where people can walk and sit and enjoy those ponds. So some of the ponds are surrounded, all of the ponds are surrounded by homes, but they all have access for the residents within the community that they can go and enjoy those ponds. I talked about common areas. One interesting part of this project is 41% of the project is open space. So of the 130 acres, we have almost 55 acres of open space. Some of it is passive in the ponds, but it's not really passive in the sense that you can't use it. These are very usable ponds and they'll be able to be used most of the time. I don't know if you want to go swimming in the winter, but if you do, they probably can be done. But we also have a large area of active open space throughout the community where people can walk, sit, reflect, play, that enhances the project. This is an indication here of some of the, a rendering of some of those gazebos that are next to the ponds with the pathways next to them, just to get a feeling of what we envision this project to be like. The project will utilize both open fencing and solid fencing. So any of the fencing that is along common areas will be an open style fencing. One of the things that we did when we pretty immediately after we got started with this project is we started communicating with the neighbors as well as the neighbors started communicating with us. And I think it's been a very good communication. We've enjoyed working with them. They have a list of things that they want to see, and I feel like we've been able to accomplish most of those, and I'll go over those shortly. But as we started that, some of the input that we received, we had obviously our official neighborhood meeting, but prior to that neighborhood meeting, we met with the immediate neighbors of Stonebriar 3 or 4 times to go over different iterations of the plan. One, I mentioned that in the beginning we had lots coming right and or roads coming off of Stonebriar. That's something they didn't want to see. So we changed that and we feel like it was for the better. And so I really feel like we've been able to work well with the neighbors. And some of the comments that we received from them is they want that open style fence in next to common areas. So it doesn't feel like a subdivision, so they can really see the landscaping that we have or that we intend on installing. But in the areas that are directly adjacent to Stonebriar lots, we'll have a 6-foot tall solid fence. So it does block some of that view, and they don't have the potential of dogs and other things that come in. Even the open style fence that you can see, initially we had kind of a 3-rail fence. In listening to them, they're worried about dogs and people crossing onto their property. We adjusted that fence to do something that keeps, it's still open so you can see it, but it keeps people from being able to cross over as easily, and mostly pets and animals and the such. Utility services, this is, we will be extending Star City Services, Star Sewer and Water District City Services to the project down Joplin Road. We'll be working with them on that. So it's a pretty significant expense to the subdivision, but it's also an investment for the community because it extends sewer to an area that currently doesn't have it. I mentioned working with the neighbors. One of their concerns in Stonebriar is they currently have a sewer system that is not up to par with DEQ. And so with the extension of this sewer system, they will be able to connect onto it and then provide some relief for them as well as for DEQ so they can be in accordance with the guidelines necessary. We'll also extend water. We also are contributing to the ITD infrastructure. It's about $300,000 that we'll be contributing to their improvements, and then a number of improvements through ACHD to improve the roads that probably currently need improvement already, but are not slated for improvement. So this project will improve things at a more rapid pace. The other thing being private roads for ACHD purposes, this provides exactly 0 miles of new roads for ACHD to maintain. So they will all be maintained through the homeowners association and will comply with the requirements with the city of Star, where it's monitored every 3 years to make sure that these roads are acceptable and are adequate. Neighborhood compatibility. So some of the items, and this gets into the letter that Stonebriar subdivision sent, we will be adding, let's see if we can get to, so this slide indicates this top picture is the entrance to Stonebriar at the, this is Joplin Road. There's this section here. This berm currently on our property, based on topography and the survey that we did out there, is a 4 to 6 foot tall berm. We will continue that berm down further. Currently, there's just a 3-rail fence here. That area is down in this area. We will be increasing this setback and this landscape easement to also have another 4 to 6 foot berm along that area. That will provide a consistent look like we have at the beginning of the subdivision down through the length of our property, as long as that road is adjacent to our property. And we will also be putting in consistent density of trees, as is in the first section of that. So it will be a very consistent look within the subdivision. There will then be a fence on the backside of those lots, between the common area and the lots. So this berm really is for the neighbors. It's not something that Rivermore subdivision will drive by. It. Stonebriar is a private road. We don't have access to that road. We currently have access to that road, but we will be relinquishing that access to the road with this project, with the exception of emergency vehicle access. The emergency vehicle access, I'll get back to a plat that we can look at. The emergency vehicle access will be approximately in this location. It will be gated, and it will be gated per Star Fire Department requirements, but it will only be for emergency vehicles. It's not for pedestrian. We will relinquish our current rights that we have for pedestrian access back to the neighbors. So we won't be going through Stonebriar. They won't be coming into Rivermore, and that access will be limited just to emergency vehicle access. So we continue talking about compatibility along the western boundary adjacent to 2 lots within Stonebriar. We have this section area. In that area, we put in half-acre lots. Those lots are 100 feet wide. They're 200 feet deep. We are proposing to increase the setbacks. Currently, a setback in that area would be a 30-foot deep setback. So on those particular lots, and it would be lots 19 through 31, that rear yard setback would be increased to 50 feet. And then we would also have that 6-foot fence on those, on that property line of that lot. That will provide that enhanced setback for really, there's 2 homeowners, Mr. Taylor and Ellison, the Ellisons. The Ellisons is a little bit further to the west. Mr. Taylor's would be the closest home to this property line. We will also be on, per the request of the neighbors, from this lot to this lot, these will be restricted to single-story homes. And so there won't be 2-story homes being able to look down on the neighborhood. We will be complying with the dark sky initiative. This is just an example of the lighting for the subdivision. We have addressed some conditions of approval that we would like to see, and we provided those to Sean. I think Sean has provided those to you in your packet. Many of these also address the letter that was provided from Stonebriar subdivision, berming, gravel extraction timeframes, ponds will be non-motorized, single-story homes and the like. We tried to address the items that they had questions or that they brought up in their questions. Here's an example of some of the homes that we have built. These are all homes that Biltmore Company has built and that we would intend on building, or we would see building within the subdivision. Both two-story homes as well as some single-story homes. So to wrap up, again, the project is in all 131 acres. 41% of that is open space, and we will keep that as open space. We have a density of just under 2 units to the acre, which is well within the range of the comprehensive plan. This project will be developed in 5 phases. The beginning of this project would be the gravel extraction. This pond again is existing. We have these 2 new ponds that we would want to start, and we would anticipate starting the extraction on that gravel this fall, this winter. Hopefully it goes quickly. A lot of that depends on, I guess if the market stops, then some gravel ponds go really quickly and some are unfortunately more the Heron River style and they take a little bit longer, but I don't think that developer wanted it to take longer either. So we would expect to move through this pretty quickly. We will use a lot of the material on site for creating the building pads, and we will have to remove some of it because there's a large amount of material coming out of that. But as per our conditions of approval, we would want to limit that to 5 years. If we need longer than that, then it would be something that we would want to come back to this body and talk about it. But in this moment, we don't see that taking that time frame. We really hope it would be done, within a year from now, that the gravel extraction would be done so we can be on to development. With that, I would stand for any questions, and I appreciate your time this evening.
Okay, I have a question just real quick. On your emergency access, are you going to use Grasscrete, or what are you going to use there?
I'm trying to remember what we met with the Middleton Fire Chief. I don't believe he liked Grasscrete, but we're
Okay.
open to it. It's going to be probably more dictated on what they will allow.
What they want? Okay,
Mhm.
all right. Okay, Councilman Keys?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So hopefully staff kind of warned you about some of the things that we would typically ask about. So first of all, because you're adjacent to a special transition overlay district, I'm really, really happy that you've been working with the neighbors to do that. We've had a couple of applications we've had to actually send back a couple times to get some things worked out. So hopefully we'll hear from the neighbors and they'll be delighted as well. One of the things I was a little surprised about was, and this is the easy one, so get ready.
Oh, good.
The application for the preliminary plat was incomplete because it didn't have the postmaster letter. And it's a really simple thing to get, and I'm curious why you didn't get that.
Sometimes it's simple. Sometimes the postmaster's busy.
Okay.
And so we will work with them and we will provide that location as per their requirements. Most likely it will be around the community center. But again, we need to work with them, and we're having a hard time coordinating with their schedule.
Okay.
Oh, that's
So
correct.
for the
Yeah,
record, I don't know if you,
It's Meridian.
That's a Meridian.
Addresses, aren't they?
Right.
Okay, and zip codes,
Right.
okay. Okay, now here come the really good ones.
are these the hard ones?
Yeah,
Okay.
so.
No, the good ones.
Oh, the good ones.
So I believe there's a private landowner to the north of you, the Lewis property.
Yes, sir.
Are you providing access onto that property? So
Yes,
they're
we
not,
are.
they're not landlocked?
We have worked with Mr. Lewis, and we provided this, it's about in this location. We provided him an access point per his request. So yes, he has an access point.
Okay, and then there's a lot of public land up there, Idaho state lands. Are you providing or contemplating any type of a sportsman's easement in particular in a general public or access in general?
We haven't contemplated a general public access. It's all private roads and private access. Some of that was what we felt would be more compatible with Stonebriar, where it's not. Stonebriar is a private road, private access point. So we were trying to continue that theme, but we are providing community access for this community into that same public lands. One of the things that we currently enjoy with the property is a pedestrian easement through Stonebriar. Stonebriar does not want us to use it. We really don't want to use it either. So we've been working with another private property owner that actually lives in Stonebriar. He is going to provide us a small easement on his property so we can provide through the Rivermore subdivision a public access easement to that public land.
Okay, and when Stonebriar came in, we actually negotiated an easement with them so we can have access to some public land. And frankly, because this is an annexation, I'm actually going to want some type of sportsman's access and public access on there. I know that right now there's a road that runs along Highway 16. I'm wondering if that could be turned into some type of a pedestrian access to allow the general public to get back there.
We get back to our pathway plan. Mr. Keys, you are correct. And we currently are showing a pathway along that Highway 16 where that road is. If that is something that we can provide a location up off of Joplin Road for people to access, and then if they need to walk or would like to walk down to that public access, that's certainly something we can do.
Okay, yeah, I think excuse me, a public easement to get that public around would be pretty important. Not on all your pathways, but I think at least to allow people to get down there to the river. And then I'm assuming I got it late. I imagine you did too. The ACHD report, if you've reviewed
Got it today.
the final report?
Yep.
Yeah, I read it today too.
Yeah.
And frankly, from what I've seen since I've been here in Star in 3.5 years, they had a requirement for the most off-site improvements that I've ever seen in an ACHD staff report. And I just wanted to verify that you guys are on board with that.
Well, that we're on board. We haven't even had time to address it with ACHD. I
Okay.
tried to contact them today, but we will work with them and coordinate with them on what we need to do. Certainly the right turn lane, left turn lane type of easements, we're on board with those. On Mystic Road, it was a requirement for improvements there on a right turn lane, but that was also an ITD requirement. So we've got to do some coordination to find out, do we actually install that right turn lane per ACHD's request, or do we provide the money for future installation per ITD's request? So there's some interagency cooperation that we'll have to coordinate through, but one way or the other, we'll have to coordinate those improvements. Some of the other widening improvements, we just need time to talk to them and make sure we understand what we're doing. Bringing the sewer, the offsite sewer down. Let's see where. Down Joplin. So we will be bringing, I don't know where I am. Oh, here we go. Couldn't see anything. So we will be bringing sewer down Joplin. So with that, we're going to have to repave some of that road anyway. So some of that might be an easy answer to correct because we'll be repaving some of that road in any event. So I wish I could give you a definitive answer, but given that I just got that today and we tried to call ACHD and they didn't return calls, we'll coordinate with them on what exactly needs to happen.
Okay. And then assuming we don't encounter the zombie apocalypse or some lesser economic downturn, how long do you anticipate your mining operation to go on?
If there's no zombies, then I would expect it to be a year.
A year?
Mhm.
So
I
if
think we can get in and out of there in a
if-
year
If we
to
put that
18
in the
months.
development agreement, and let's say we call it 18 months, and then we'll revisit depending on what happens with the economy, you'd be okay with that?
If you can give me 2 years, that would be better. Yeah, I mean, part of that takes time to get approvals because there's going to be a certain amount of time of just getting the construction
No, I
approvals.
understand that, once you get through the entitlement process and mobilize, so.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. We're not, this isn't yes, we're mining, but this project isn't to mine. We are extracting the gravel so we can build a subdivision. So it's not, I know there's subdivisions that want to mine a little slower because they might be able to extract a little more money out of the gravel. That's not our intent. We want a pond so we can build homes and build a subdivision and provide the community that we see. So I would think 2 years is an acceptable
This is going to be used
amount
on
of time.
site.
Not all of it, there's
Not
too
all of it,
much.
some of it is.
Some of it will have to leave the site, but a large portion of it will be on site. And then whatever is in excess will be trucked off site. That trucking will be done. We won't be utilizing Stonebriar Road for any of that. So it won't interfere with, as far as the trucking with the neighbors.
Okay, and then the last thing I have for now is you've got a single entry. Typically, the fire department, everybody else is going to require 2 entries. Yours is pretty non-traditional because your second entry is gated. Have you actually contemplated a second entry for your residents onto Joplin?
We did. But part of the reason that we created the entry we created, I'll try to get back to the beginning. This entry onto Joplin, it's got a median down the center of it. So fire department wise, there's the emergency access, but there's also, it's a large entryway. We really wanted to create this single point of entry to make it feel more like a community. So we looked at other entry points. We could even provide another entry point, but we felt like with this, it would generate and create that coming home feeling where you come down that nice entry. It's a curved entry if you can see that. There'll be lighting in there. There'll be a significant amount of landscaping, and it brings you right into a very major community center. And so we want people as they come back into the community to feel like they're coming home and coming somewhere special, not coming in the back way, if you will. And so it was a deliberate attempt on our part with that single entry.
Yeah, and I guess my perspective is I agree that your aesthetic is probably going to be gorgeous, but I'm thinking in the event that there's some type of an emergency, a car fire, first responders are blocking the road, how would your residents get in and out? I'm thinking more from a public safety perspective.
Sure, and part of that is why we have those medians in the middle. So I guess they could block both sides of the road, but it's much more difficult to block that when there is that median in the center that protects both travel lanes from one another.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got for now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any further questions of the applicant at this time? Councilwoman?
Yep, thank you. So this is the first time I've seen development of this size come in where all the streets have been private. Can you explain, why'd you make that decision to keep them all private?
So we originally contemplated public streets. We decided to go private based on some of our experience in Riverstone subdivision. I believe you know it as Moon Valley subdivision. We are building in that community. We're not the developer of that. But it created that feeling of exclusivity, yes, but more of a home process. People felt a little safer when they were there. They didn't have people driving on the streets unnecessarily. And also getting feedback from Stonebriar, where Stonebriar has always been a private street, but just recently, they would tell you when, but with the extension of Highway 16, they were able to add that gate to their road, and it provided them that additional security and privacy within their subdivision. We're trying to be a little more in line with what they are. So it was just from experience, I guess, and it was what we felt would be the best for this community.
Okay. And then I noticed that there's a number of trees currently on the property right now. Do you have any plans to, preserve those trees? Are they in good shape or?
We are trying to preserve all the trees we can. We do have a beaver problem. So we're trying to work on the beaver problem out there right now. He's very elusive, but there is a number of large trees in this section. I believe we can preserve all of them. There's one that is suspect, but we're trying all we can do to keep that one tree. It has to do with the alignment of the road, but we're trying to keep those, especially the large trees, trying to keep those intact because we feel like they're part of what is there now. And that's what we want to see as you drive into the community, something that feels established and gives you roots, so to speak, in the community.
Okay. And then are you making any changes to the current pond that's there now?
The only change we would make is if we decide to deepen it. That pond was dug 16 feet deep and then stopped. So we'll evaluate that and see if we can if it makes sense to go any deeper. And that's just in an effort to make it more of a cleaner pond.
Okay.
We will be putting in aerators and other things, so it'll definitely be cleaned up. But if we could make it deeper, it would be better for the pond.
Okay, because there are fish in that pond currently.
Yes, there
and
are.
so I don't know if there's anything that we have to do to work to protect the fish.
You catch them and you eat them.
Yeah, okay, get out there and catch them.
You can protect them right until you eat them.
That's right.
But yeah,
But
we
you're not
would,
putting-
we would relocate them to the other ponds or,
Okay.
there's lots of people that want the fish.
And can you point out exactly where the BLM land is to the north?
So there's two sections. This area is part of our subdivision that will maintain as a natural riparian area. But right behind that, this whole section here is public land. This area, roughly in this area, is Mr. Lewis's property. And then there's another section in here. When you get over here, this gentleman's name is Mr. Barker. So we'll have a public access in this location based on conversations with Mr. Keys. This pathway would allow access down to the public access or the public land as well. So there's two sections of public land that goes all the way to the river, and then it creates even more access down along the river.
So I just want to, so those two pieces are State Department of Lands pieces. The BLM is further down the river.
State Department of Lands.
Yeah.
So,
They're different.
yeah, they're
Okay,
different.
okay. And then basically the whole perimeter, do you see that, like that open style fencing? Or is it just really behind the houses that open up to the?
No, so we'll have open style fencing. We think along here, we've got to work with ITD. There's currently a barbed wire fence there that we'd like to replace, but we'll see if we can. The rest of it, like along this area, there'll be fencing along the pathways. So the majority of what you see will be open fencing. There's a significant amount of common area in the middle. There's common area around the ponds. All of the backyards will be open fencing. The only solid fencing will be on this section here. And then between the homes, there will be solid fencing between the homes. So they enjoy some privacy from their neighbors.
Okay.
All right, thank you. That's all I had.
Any further questions of the applicant at this time?
Mayor Chadwick,
Councilman Nielsen?
just one question. You've listed here, or somebody has, I'm not sure where the Rivermore Conditions of Approval document came from. Is this yours?
I did that, yes.
And in your presentation, you talked about side yard setbacks consistent with R3 zoning. R2 zone that you're requesting is a 10-foot side yard setback. So talk to me about what's going on here.
Again, this is from our experience in other subdivisions in, I don't know if I should call it Riverstone, which is known commonly by our Moon Valley subdivision.
Moon
but-
Valley is great.
Okay, so Moon Valley is an R2 DA subdivision as well. It has some smaller lots. One of the struggles when you do, say, a 60-foot wide lot and you have a 10-foot setback, you still only have a 40-foot wide house. And so we, in Moon Valley, they enjoy those same setbacks where you have a 5-foot per story setback. So you have a 5-foot setback, and then as you have a second story, that house has to step in another 5 feet on the second story. So it still provides the opportunity to build a substantial house on lots that are nice lots, and they all have nice features. We don't want to limit the home size to such a small home size that it is detrimental to the subdivision. We could make larger lots, but then we would have less open space. And we felt like we could have the more open space would be better for the community, for this community and the community in general, with smaller lots, and we could accomplish those types of homes with a reduced setback without compromising the feel of the subdivision.
I appreciate that explanation. I disagree that it makes for a nicer subdivision. I think putting people 10 feet apart, where you can, hear between the walls and things like that it's kind of the stack and pack mentality. And I'm surprised to see that here in an R2 subdivision. I expect that in just about all the others that they come before us, and even where it's allowed, we're asking them to not do it. So I would prefer to see that stay at the 10-foot setback. I think personally as a compromise, I would look at that, that if one home on one side of the home has a 5-foot setback, the home directly adjacent to that 5-foot setback would be required to have a 10-foot setback on that side, so that there's at least 15 feet between the homes, and we're not just jamming those things in there.
So I understand what you're saying, but if you can picture again, we can make these lots bigger, but these lots would then enjoy much less open space. So they are closer to each other, but all of them enjoy a significant amount of space in the parts where they live, in those backyards area, in the walking paths and the common areas. It allows us to provide an alternative to people, as you say, jammed in there, because this really isn't jammed in there. We're less than 2 units to the acre.
Sure.
And
Because of all
we-
that open space, but that requires that people then to leave their lot, to leave their home and go to that open space to get that. Whereas where you're living at home, you're out in your backyard, your patios are there, 10 feet away from each other.
But they're open space, that only 11% of the people don't live on open space.
Yeah.
So they don't have to leave. It's in their backyard. That open space is their backyard.
I understand.
Again, it's just the experience of what we've done and what we've seen and what we feel like makes a better community. When we increase those, I certainly don't want to compare you to Eagle, but we struggle with this in Eagle because they force those larger setbacks, but it doesn't provide the people the home that they want to live because it forces a smaller home on the same lot.
Well, it really depends, and I've called out a number of times over in Legacy where Eagle has allowed the 5-foot setbacks, and in some cases they look aesthetically pleasing and they seem to do okay. In most of those cases, they're not. And so even in Eagle where they've started to allow those, and this comes from experience too. I mean, we've seen
Sure.
an awful lot of development here. I watch these neighborhoods come in, and every one of them that comes in with a 5-foot setback, those houses 10 feet apart, it doesn't feel good. You drive through them and you feel congested. And we've got to stop that. We've got to stop that feeling of congestion. And you've done a great job here with a lot of open space. I remain concerned though that when you get to your housing part of it, it's great to drive through beautiful open space, but then boom, you're right there stacked on top of each other.
So would you be willing, I don't know if compromise is the right word, but open to other options where lots that are narrower than, say, 72 feet wide, those would have a 5-foot setback. Anything great, and 72 is a specific number, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But lots greater than 72 feet wide could have a 10 foot on one side, 5 feet on the other side. The 72 number is important because that allows us to provide a type of home, 3-car garage and the such that is what people are looking for. That provides a 62-foot wide home.
Yeah, I personally, no, I don't think I would want to
Okay.
do that. I'd like to see the 10-foot setback, so.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions?
Mayor Chadwick.
Councilwoman?
So I noticed on your slide here, when you were looking at, with your conditions of approval here, the single-story homes, you had highlighted which lots. But I think that the number you had in your slide here was different than what is in this condition of approval that you provided. So I just wanted to check that. So you have 19 through lot 27 on our sheet here, but I think on the slide it was 19 through 28.
Yeah, so on our conditions of approval, we changed that. I'm trying to find the compatibility. On the letter that we received from Stonebriar subdivision, I just counted wrong. So initially, those are lots 19 through 28, which is consistent with, at least what we believe is consistent with the request from Stonebriar subdivision of 19 through 28. So we would request the single-story homes to be 19 through 28 versus 19 through 27.
28. Okay, so it should be 19 through 28 on your condition of approval here.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions of the applicant at this time? Wow, okay, good. Thank you, sir.
Thank
So
you.
We'll move on to the public testimony portion. We have, let's see, who's first here? Is it Mike Brown? You're good? Okay, all right. We have Daniela signed up. You're golden? You good? How about you, Mr. Jeffrey? Good, okay. Okay, then we'll move on to, let's see, John Garrett. Please state your name and address there when you get up there, sir, for the record.
Mayor.
And you got 3 minutes.
Council.
Okay.
I'm John Garrett. You live at 6235 West Sheringa Ridge Drive. And this picture up here on the wall is the subject property as it looks now without the house on it. A similar subdivision on this property was presented to the Star City Council some years past. The Star City Council rejected the annexation of it then, just as the present council should reject it now. The reason that it was rejected last time was that there is no way to move that much traffic out of the subdivision. Star Road and Chinden are more congested now than they were back then. With that many homes, you are talking about 1,200 cars, and that's their number from page, I believe, 39 in their deal, a day going out of this subdivision. This subdivision sits in a pocket. Highway 16 to the east, the Boise River to the north, and Stonebriar subdivision to the west, leaving the only way out is to the south. I have daily seen traffic backed up on Chinden, Star Road, and 44 for over a mile. Just think if you are the 30th car or more in a line at a stop sign trying to get onto Star Road or Chinden, you could be sitting there for hours. I have sat at similar intersections for almost an hour, and I was only the 20th one in line. What about school buses? How are the kids going to get to school? With 2 kids per home, that's over 500 kids with no way out. The problem is not going to get any better in the future. The decision that the city council makes will affect us forever. That's too many homes, that's too many cars for that area with a very limited out. Vote to deny Rivermore. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And
Okay.
Miss Gail?
I have a question real quick.
Oh,
for
Mr.
Garrett.
Mr. Garrett, she has a question for you.
Yeah, so you mentioned that there was it came in front of, there was an application in the past
Yes.
for this.
And it was rejected by the city council because of the existing roads, the Joplin Road, Star Road, and Chinden. And they're worse now than they were back then.
And so in our staff report, it says that there's no history of land use applications. Is that because it was denied or?
We don't have anything on record for it? Yeah.
It definitely was. It was before 16 went in.
Oh, so that would have been 9-ish, 10-ish, somewhere in there?
Yeah, I don't remember the year.
All right.
It was on this very same property.
Okay.
2000, okay. All right, you good? All right, Miss Gail? State your name and address, please, ma'am.
Mayor and city councilman.
And if, just real quick, if you don't mind, pull that microphone down a little bit for me.
About
There we
right
go.
there?
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor, city council members, I'm Gail Garrett at 6235 West Syringa Ridge. I have lived all of my life in Idaho. I have lived in Star for 33 years. I am against the Rivermore subdivision development. This picture was taken from our front steps. We set up on a ridge, and I just want you to know all the open area there. I, like many residents of Star, lived in the city for its safety and its beauty and the community support many country Idaho cities are known to have. People enjoy the low traffic recreation area and safety. Bicycle riders can relish an afternoon riding down Syringa Ridge and Joplin roads. Mothers can be seen walking with strollers. Couples may saunter and talk peacefully. With the 252 home development, my concern is this will be lost. The area will have a suburb rather than a country feel. Traffic will cause safety concerns for bikers and walkers. The atmosphere of the community will change. I believe most current Star residents share my values and that our needs are being cast aside for the sake of development. I fear this new city attitude will cause the current residents to conclude they must relocate to live the life they moved to Star to live. I already know one neighbor who has made this choice. On the existing pond that you see here, there have been two white swans. That has been for the last 4 years. This year, there were 5. I am concerned about the wildlife on this property. What plans exist for managing the traffic burdens that are anticipated by the unwanted Rivermore subdivision development? I ask that the Rivermore subdivision development be denied and Star to remain the country living that the current residents value. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you. All right. And then we have one more. Is it Kevin Brunk? Okay. You know what? 2 weeks ago, it was like 80 in here.
Oh, really?
It was
Yeah.
brutal. So this keeps everybody awake.
Okay. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for holding this public hearing. I think you
I
guys,
need, state your address for me, please.
oh, yes, 7795 North Stonebriar Lane,
And name.
J. Kevin Brunk.
Okay, thank you.
I think you guys received a package that the homeowners and the board of directors put together from Stonebriar with conditions on it. And I'm sorry that we weren't able to put them up on the screen for everybody else to say, but as we walk through this, you might want to have those maps and look, because I'll be referring to them. As a whole, Stonebriar is supporting this development, but it has to deal with the conditions that we've asked for need to be met. So right now we're undecided until we get in concrete that what we've asked for is going to be part of his development agreement with the city. When I moved out here, the rural landscape will be in perpetuity, gone forever with this development. I think the road along the I-16 that you're looking for access to the river for, that's the maintenance road for I-16. So I'm not sure if you're going to be able to use that and convert it to a walkway or, and actually a car has actually gone over and we had someone died going over that cliff into that road, that access. So I've broken down, and there's some complications with this because the previous owner that owned it, Craig Groves, he got foreclosed on. And before he got foreclosed on, he still had the majority votes and control over the subdivision CC&Rs. And at that time, Ron Sally owned the property that was along Joplin. So when he was going to lose Stonebriar, he was going to be landlocked with his 2 other 40-acre lots north of Ron Sally. So he literally, with his own, majority, made Stonebriar and moved an easement down Stonebriar, and actually the property line actually goes into the road. So he would have access to his other 2 lots when he lost Stonebriar because Ron Sally owned the front. And so it created some easements and some difficulties that I think we can clean up pretty easily. So I'm gonna look at Exhibit A first, which is your number 1 in your packet. And basically what we're asking for here is that
You got about 45 seconds, so just so you're aware.
oh, well, yeah, I was gonna ask for more time. A lot of people could make it here, okay? And I only have 14
Mr.
items to
Mayor.
work.
He represents the entire subdivision.
Oh, okay,
so
got you.
we're giving
I got you.
additional-
Yeah,
Okay.
because half the people could make it here, some are out of town. And we've got the president of the board of directors and we both worked on this
So
and
we do the 10 minutes? Yeah,
Well,
okay, good.
all I need is to get through these 14
Okay.
points. So basically, there's the emergency access that is going to be required for this will ending up at Stonebriar and coming down it. Okay. So we need to have a new easement made for that access. And along with that easement, we're going to need to have Rivermore have us on and indemnify us and hold us harmless on their insurance policy, because our insurance policy is going to require that. Even though it's not a road that's used every day, if it's an emergency and there's chaos, there's potential for people getting hurt on that. And we have to have an easement that we will give Rivermore for that property. So we'll write a new easement. They currently have an easement on this property too, which is, and if you kind of see this map, you see how it kind of started turning there? That's where he was going to enter when he was trying to get to his property, Craig Groves, when he sold it. So, and then there's a property line that needs to be adjusted because the property line literally right now goes on to Stonebriar. And actually, so half of from like this, well, if you look at your map from here to here, the road is on Rivermore's property. So what we want to do is do a property line adjustment. I talked to Sean about that and move that over so that basically Stonebriar is only on Stonebriar property. And then Rivermore would forgive their existing easements and we'd be all set. So you have any questions on that before I go to the next one? Okay.
We'll keep going, and then if we have questions, we'll grab.
Oh, okay.
Sean.
Okay. So then
Mayor Chadwick,
Okay, we got a question.
sorry, I guess my only question is, are these facts pertinent for this hearing? I mean, these seem like things that should be.
well, they're
That's
pertinent.
part-
They're really important to us though. And we're talking.
I understand they're important to you. I'm not trying to suggest they're not important at all. Just that when it comes to making a public or a decision here at the public hearing, things that should happen between the private parties, I mean, this council can't do anything to affect those.
Well, then what I'd ask that we do is before you make a vote that we table this meeting and this decision till we've actually worked these out with the Rivermore property owners.
Like I said, this council doesn't have any bearing on whether or not those things are in place. Those are things that happen between the two private parties.
But we need to get these.
So our decision here tonight can't force you guys to negotiate and come to any agreement on it.
No, I understand that, but I just don't feel that what I'm bringing up here is part of what Stonebriar is saying that we need to have it to
I
get this done.
understand. Look, I'm not trying to tell you it's not important. I'm just saying that we don't have the authority to help you.
Well, I'm not, but I no, what I'm asking before you vote though, to table your vote, to give us time to work it out with Kevin.
I feel like that would be improper for us to.
So Sean, let's get staff and Chris's opinion.
Mr. Mayor and Council, let's let Mr. Brunk go through his entire list because there are some things in there that are pertinent to this, what will be in the development agreement. All of it might not be, and I guess after that point we can discuss which ones to.
So I guess I'd be interested for you to sort through that since you seem to be apprised of some of this already.
Well, I've got the letter in front. Yeah, I've got the letter in front of me. I've got actually both letters.
Well, can't we just allow him to speak and just give him
Yeah,
his
let's
10 minutes?
let-
to
it's-
tell
it's
us
not-
the 14 points?
Do his thing. and
Right.
then we can discuss it.
Okay, so then the second point is Exhibit B, which had to do to the emergency access gate. And I put these in before. I'm a developer too. And there are certain requirements that the fire department will have. And one of the things that we're willing to approve this for is because we want Stonebriar are 10-acre lots. And the minimum house has to be like 4,000 square feet. There's 10,000 square foot houses on. These are real large estate lots. So we just wanted to make sure that we get a buffer between their subdivision and ours. So we still have that grand entrance coming into Stonebriar without seeing the backyards of other people's homes. And one of those ways was a berm. So number 3 is Rivermore to be required to abandon all existing Stonebriars. That's not on yours, it sounds like. Number 4 is the existing East Stonebriar and Rivermore property line needs to be readjusted so it's all on the same property. And that basically I did a cross section for the property which shows that their wire fence, their fence that would be open would be on the back side of, on their side of the berm. And this side is Stonebriar, and this is where the street would be. This kind of gives you a good example of exactly what it'll end up looking like. So number 5 has to do with the indemnity and the hold harmless for the easement.
You keep going. He's asking for some info.
Oh, okay. Number 6 was that Rivermore would provide an 8 to 10 foot berm, not a 6 foot berm, because with an 8 foot berm, we won't be able to see their backyards at all. It'll give them their privacy. Now we're just talking along Stonebriar, and the property owners that had north of the street right here, which is the Ellisons, the Taylors, and then the Groves are here, they wanted a berm going the whole length of the properties, so their backyards did not look into the backyards of the Rivermore. So really, the berm would need to be extended from where it is all the way to the north side of this property. And with the amount of, I think they said they might be moving 1.5 million cubic yards of pit run. And there's plenty of material for them to go ahead and do that and put that berm in. Okay. I have 1,000-foot berm on my west side from the Phillipses that I put in when I dug my pond, 28 feet deep. So, and they're going to have such heavy equipment there and be moving so much. I think that's one of the really, really important things that we want along here is that high berm that completely separates the two subdivisions, and then landscaped and planted trees and sprinklered, and also that, and it would all be on the Rivermore property. None of it would be on Stonebriar. And then we also asked that that Rivermore would maintain the berm also on the maintenance, because it's going to be on their property. And they would have landscape on the back side of it for their new homes there with that fence. And then on our side, it would be landscaped. I think all 3 property owners, the Ellisons, the Taylors, and the Groves, sent you a personal letter. Did you guys receive those? Requesting this berm?
Mr. Mayor, and Council, the Taylor letters in your packet, the Groves letter was emailed to you when I got it yesterday morning.
And then Ellison. Also, there's another letter from, that was an email. I sent you that too. And he actually said that he was giving permission for Rivermore to build that berm. So, okay. So the 6-foot fence goes the whole length also, and it follows the berm. And because we can't have any connectivity whatsoever of people, dogs, or vehicles onto Stonebriar. Our insurance company will not insure us with that. Number 8 talks about the landscaping, irrigation.
So you got about 60 seconds.
Oh, so basically that water would be supplied by Rivermore for that berm also. The Rivermore would maintain the berm, and we would give them access on this another easement, including with the fire, for their maintenance people to come on to Stonebriar to maintain their berm. I think we already went over the 1-story houses, and that's good. The dark skylight we went over, and that's good. The recreational clubhouse is good where it's located, and the Rivermore pond is no motorized. The only thing that so basically that's everything we talked about. Is he definitely is going to be mining this property, and to give him 5 years to mine it, we'll hear his machines and those trucks to mine that to get out onto Joplin is just way too long. We can't. That's 5 years is a typical mining period, and I understand that he wants to mine. He can make a lot of money doing that, but I think if we could keep it into the 18 months. We really don't want to have trucks and big equipment and excavators and
About 10 seconds.
10 seconds, 9 bulldozers there, for years in a high-end community that we have here. But
Time's up.
Rivermore is a
Here,
very,
Chadwick.
yeah. Just let me compliment the developer for you guys. Kevin is very well known and he's a quality man, and I'm sure we'll work all this out. And with that being said, that we would move forward and support approving this development, but we really need to get these taken care of.
Okay, Councilman Nielsen?
And he has a great name.
Yeah, Kevin, yeah.
So, yeah, I appreciate Sean, you guys getting those documents. I've been out of town for some time and I have not seen this packet.
Oh.
So I appreciate Councilwoman Salmonson letting me look over her laptop here as well.
Here, I'll give you, here's a. complete
So, well, just a question. I mean, these are a lot of demands to be placed. And my question is, if Stonebriar wanted to be so exclusive, why didn't you guys build all these things onto your property and ensure that it happened? Why wait until now when
Well-
you're now trying to get the neighbor to pay for your exclusive, lack of sight into anybody else's property? Why didn't you
I'll
guys
tell you,
do that?
well, because Craig Rose lost this in bankruptcy to Sterling Bank, okay, and he owned all this property that doesn't have the berm in front of it. So he was going to install those when he did his new development and build more houses over there. And our CCNRs are very strict. He's the one that was the original developer that made this a large estate, 10-acre lots. And who did? Oh, Scheidler did. That's right. He lost it too. Yeah, Rose bought it from Scheidler. And, but anyway, again, with the amount of dirt that they're going to be moving and the mining they're going to do to build a berm I built 1,000 linear foot berm in 30 days on my property.
Sure, but you can understand where my question is coming from. That's pretty significant expense. So you're
No,
asking
it
somebody-
really isn't that much when you have the equipment there and you're building berms and digging ponds. And
But you're coming to this body asking us to then require them to do that expense for your benefit. And so I'm trying to
yeah,
rationalize that a little
well,
bit.
basically to keep our subdivision private and how it was and saving the sanctity, and our rural landscape to not be looking into backyards. Yes.
Okay.
Do you have any comments, Sean?
Mr. Mayor and Council, if you're done talking to, if Kevin's done talking to Kevin before we get Kevin up here.
This has been pretty great, honestly.
It's a Kevin fest. I've got both of the letters in front of me, and as Mr. Brunk said, most of the items have been discussed, and I believe we can make conditions of approval. The two outstanding issues that I see are the landscape berm between the two subdivisions, and that will go into the type of fencing that will be required, and then the hold harmless liability insurance, which I don't know how we would deal with that one, but those seem to be the two outstanding issues that I think we'll let Mr. Amer get up and he can speak to those.
Okay.
But one thing to point out to Councilmember Nielsen is this is a special transitional designation on the Stonebriar subdivision. So we can require, or you can require, offsite buffering like we've done in several subdivisions of the same.
Right,
or
well,
in
it's
the
an
same-
annexation, so technically I can require anything I want for them
Sure.
to annex, but
That's true. So it's not really out of the
even
ordinary.
though we
for-
could, doesn't
for-
necessarily mean that we should. It just seems a little odd.
I could
Okay,
just,
I'm open to hearing all sides on this.
Okay.
Councilman
Those
Nielsen, I
are
can-
the two outstanding issues that I see. Everything else, I believe we can get detailed on to make sure that Stonebriar is comfortable with those conditions that we put in the development.
And then one other thing, if we build the berm the whole length, then we would need a solid fence, like the wood fence that he is planning where the berm isn't right now. I don't know if you saw, there were two different types of fence. So it would be the berm and then that metal fence the whole distance. So it'd be the same. Because we really don't want to look at wooden fence either.
okay,
Sounds like you guys should have bought that property.
No, but the only ones that is affecting are those 3 homes that sent you personal letters asking for this because it's their backyard. The rest of them, it's all along Stonebriar.
okay,
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for the extra time too.
yep.
Mr.
Yep.
Mayor,
Councilman
I have a question for Mr.
Keys.
Brunk.
Mr. Bronk, you're not done yet. So you get 15 minutes almost.
Yeah.
So we received, and I hope you've got a copy of
Rivermore's? Yeah.
This list.
I
yeah.
got that 10 minutes before I got here, yeah.
Okay, so as you review that list, what is on here that diverges from the list that you're asking us to
Okay.
approve?
Let's see, so, says limit the Stonebriar subdivision emergency access with no pedestrians. Rivermore shall install emergency gates required. This is where we need to put in that we have to have an easement. There'd be a new easement for him there. And this is where we also need the liability insurance naming the Stonebriar H area as additional insured by Rivermore in case there's an emergency. You could have 1,200 cars driving through that place and emergency vehicles coming in and out. In an emergency, that's what that's used for. And we have to have liability insurance from them, naming us as additional insured. I think we're good there. The other one is the number 13, 5 years of mining. That's ridiculous. You know, we're a single family large subdivision. And then the other thing was number 14. And we want a berm the whole length of the property. Not just one more lot.
Okay, and he's proposing, is already stipulated to a 6-foot berm. Would 6 feet be adequate if you went all the way?
Well, we're trying to make a screen, and I think in my thing I said there, what is it, a something screen? You see number on 9, a visual screen. We're trying to make a visual screen so we're not, and it's good for the neighbors too, that as we're driving down Stonebriar, we don't want to be looking to their backyards, and I don't think they want to see cars in their backyard.
Okay, so you really want that to be 8 feet at least?
Yeah,
Okay.
With trees on top.
no, not trees on top. Okay.
Oh, I apologize. That's what I heard you say. I'm not trying to.
No,
be
they would be staggered on both sides of the berm because this would also be a beautification for their backyards. They're going to be looking at through a wrought iron fence and looking at a beautiful berm with, it's got landscaping.
A landscaped 8-foot berm that is landscaped in the fashion that the current berm currently is.
Correct. And then the new fence that you look through that keeps the connectivity of dogs going onto the berm and onto the properties and stuff, and human beings.
Okay, thank you for
All
clarifying.
right, thank you.
Are we good? Mr. Neymar?
Thank you, council member or mayor, council members. I tried to take some notes. I'm going to start in reverse order and address what we heard last first. So I also received the letter from Stonebriar with their list of requirements for the subdivision. And that is that's what made me provide the Stonebriar conditions of approval letter. Obviously, I can't require you to include these conditions of approval, but I just thought it would be a good talking point. We talked about the mining. I put the 5 years in there. Kevin may think it's ridiculous, but there was no time frame before, so I just tried to put a time frame in this meeting. We talked about 2 years or 18 months. We're certainly willing to limit that. The other things have to do with easements, and that's something that they brought up initially. We don't want, I currently own part of their road. I don't want to own part of their road. And so that is outside, I believe, of this body to correct, but it's something that we will certainly correct with the neighbors. We want to relinquish those easements. I stated that in my initial proposal or discussion of this project. We're going to relinquish all pedestrian and vehicular easements with the exception of emergency access easements. And we can do that outside of this, but we're working with Stonebriar to do that. As far as the berming, our proposal to do 6-foot berming. Sean, can we go, I don't know how to get to the PowerPoint.
Your PowerPoint that you got?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Somewhere there's pictures of berms. And I took these pictures. So if you look at this berm in particular, and I didn't get a picture of Mr. Brunk's berm. This berm is built and was recently built by the Groves. That berm is 4 to 5 feet tall, and it was built within this year. And this berm here, sorry, I was talking about, yeah, this berm is the new berm. This berm is the existing berm that was built with the subdivision. And per our survey, it's 4 to 6 feet tall. So our proposal to keep that berm at 4 to 6 feet tall was to be consistent with what both the Groves recently built, as well as what's existing in the subdivision. When we get taller than that, either your berm gets wider or your berm gets steeper, but it certainly becomes less consistent with what's in the subdivision. So we feel like that 6 feet tall, 4 to 6 feet tall, because it'll be an undulating berm. We don't want just a peak of dirt down the center. And with consistent plantings that are similar to, not the Groves, they're a little more sparse than we would see. Sorry, here. They didn't do any plantings on top of theirs, but they've just built it, so they may in the future. It's more in this front entrance. We would want consistent landscaping with that. Along Mr. Taylor's property and Ellison's property, I hadn't actually seen a letter from Ellison's. That is where we're proposing, because of the estate lots and the larger size of those lots as well as depths, we're not proposing a berm, but we're certainly proposing a fence to eliminate some of that obstruction as a solid fence. That's what we're trying to do to be harmonious with the neighborhood. One of the other questions that came up, let me go through their list. As far as the hold harmless, we'll work with them on that. That can be with the CCNRs. And then we are, although we don't actually get to enjoy the berm because it will be basically for the benefit of Stonebriar, that is something that we're maintaining through Rivermore subdivision. We'll install it and then we will also maintain that berm. The question that came up with respect to the road access, where we talked about a potential future easement for access to the property, that if it's an ITD access point, it has no access to ITD property. It's a fully fenced, barbed wire fence just for this. It actually runs the length of that property for irrigation. There's a concrete irrigation ditch there to water the property. There's no access point from our property onto ITD along that line. There is up near Joplin Road right at the beginning. So that point we'd have to maintain open, but it would maintain open anyway. So we'll be able to provide that pathway along that area. I think those were, correct me if I'm wrong, the major questions that came up. When I said in the beginning that when we first acquired this property and started working on it, we contacted the neighbors, but the neighbors also contacted us pretty quickly. The biggest benefit I see is this subdivision to the neighbors is we do provide a solution to their sewer issue that they currently have. We're bringing sewer to the project. They need that sewer. There's other alternatives they can do, but listening to them, this is their best alternative to provide that sewer so they can correct their sewer problem currently. And then they're also looking at dividing their property into smaller, maybe not 10-acre, but 5-acre lots so they can provide additional homes in that project. With the development that we're providing, with the type of homes that we're providing, with the landscaping we're providing, the common areas we're providing, the clubhouse we're providing, and also just the style of home, we have overall control of this project. We plan on building the homes within the subdivision. And so as we look at how those homes are compatible with one another, we're able to look at where yards are placed, where windows are placed, how patios are placed from one neighbor to the next. So we can provide that privacy that maybe in a traditional subdivision you can't, because we have the ability to do a full master plan community. We're working on 2 other projects right now that are pretty large, and we're planning each home on each lot so we know what those community residents will be able to enjoy. Will the windows, we don't like it when windows are looking directly at one another. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to look out one window and see their neighbor. Nobody wants patios that are right next to each other. And so because we have that master plan ability with this, we can provide through architectural control and also through just the construction standards that we adhere to, what our Biltmore standard is. we can provide a community that, that most of Star and most of the valley doesn't enjoy, because a lot of the master plan communities are more, they're just quicker. They're built to be in and out, and we really want this to be a community, a home. And that's why we designed it the way we did. So we appreciate your time this evening. If there's other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. We'd ask for your approval on Rivermore subdivision.
Any further questions of the applicant?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys?
so it seems like everything we've talked about with the neighbors is in pretty good shape, except for this berm.
Yes, sir.
And I want to figure out how we can get past this berm issue tonight. So they've asked for an 8-foot tall berm. You're talking about a 6-foot undulating berm. They've talked about a berm that goes the entire length of the subdivision. You're talking about one that doesn't. How do we get to a place where everybody can be happy?
So as we've gone through the iterations of this project, each time that we've come back with an iteration and answered a question, the neighbors have come back with more questions. And so when we first met with them and met with Mr. Taylor, and I don't believe he's here this evening, he said, I just don't want 2-story homes and I want a fence. A berm would be nice, but I don't really care. Even in his letter, he said the berm where viable. So we are putting in the berm where we feel like it is viable. And I feel like part of this is we come with more solutions, and then there becomes more questions. When we started with, we wanted the emergency access, they said, well, are you going to give up all your other easements? And we didn't even have a conversation. We're just giving up the easements. We don't want easements to their project. And so we are providing solutions, I believe, at every level, with the exception of maybe how high we want to berm, because we feel like the ability to vary heights of a berm, one, makes it look nicer, and two, it's just a little more practical within the subdivision. And where we put the berm just provides that transition. We added on our own additional setbacks from a 30-foot setback, which is currently a R2 requirement, to a 50-foot setback. They heard that, and then they put it in their letter that that's a requirement of theirs. Well, it was only a requirement of theirs because we'd already proposed it. And so we're happy with that. So how do we come up with a solution? I don't know, but I feel like we presented a very compatible neighborhood. We're providing berming, and we're providing berming that's as big as what they recently built. The Groves recently built a berm. I believe Kevin Brunk's berm is no higher than 6 feet. He's here, so he can answer that question.
It's all right, we can't speak.
Okay.
any further.
But if they wanted a taller berm than 6 feet, why didn't they build one? They want me to build that, yet they didn't provide it for themselves. So I feel like we're providing something they currently don't have. They don't have that buffer currently. We're providing that. It's not required for the subdivision because there's a road that separates the majority of the subdivision from our property that provides that buffer. So we're exceeding any city requirements, which is okay, because that's what we want to do. We want it to be a compatible subdivision, but we also want it to be a very unique subdivision.
So do you believe you have berming alongside every property owner who expressed that was important to them?
Yes, initially. I think Kevin Taylor then later came back and said, well, a berm where viable. So he's not here, so it's hard to know what he means by where viable. But certainly everywhere along the public road where people would drive in and out of Stonebriar, we have berming along that entire area. The only part that we wouldn't have berming is right at the emergency access, because we need that access point. But for the rest of that, all along Stonebriar Road that is adjacent to our property, yeah, we are providing berming. And we're providing fencing like was drawn in the plan on the backside, on the Rivermore side of that berm, so they don't see a fence at all. That's on the other side of the berm.
And can you show me, so you're going to extend an existing berm that's already there, correct?
Yes.
And can you show me how long that exists today?
Yes, I will. So currently, as you come, this is Stonebriar Lane at this access point. There's a berm here. There's no berm, but there's some landscaping here. And then the berm runs from approximately this point to this point. This is the Phyllis Slough. So there's no berm at that Phyllis Slough because of the slough. We will then pick up the berm from this point. There is no berm currently. I'll show you another picture. And we will run that down to here, all along Stonebriar Road, that entire length of the road that people are coming in and out of. That picture is right here. So here's the existing berm up on near Joplin. Here's the new berm that the Groves built. This property is Stonebriar property, and right now it is divided by just this 3-rail fence. So where this 3-rail fence is all the way down to this point, which is the curve in Stonebriar Road, we will be adding that additional berm. We will be rebuilding a different fence on the back side of that berm. So as they're driving down Stonebriar, this is a very good indication on both sides of the road, about a 6-foot berm of what they will see going down Stonebriar Road.
Okay, so where the existing berm is, it looks like in your plan, there's actually a significant amount of open space behind that.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and then where you're going to build a new berm is where you're planning on building homes. Is that correct?
On the back side of that berm, yes, there will be homes.
Backside of
Yes,
that
sir.
berm. So if we were to say, leave the existing berm that was built by others alone, and then the berming that you're going to build, if you were to do that, it's an undulating 6 to 8 foot berm with landscaping.
Yes, I would
Would
do
that be
that.
reasonable?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm a pretty reasonable guy. Try
Mr.
to
Mayor,
be.
Councilman Hershey?
one question I have. What's the approximate distance between the Stonebriar subdivision and where the homes, the back of the homes that are in question would be? How many feet are we talking about? I know we got 50 to their property line.
So
Trying to figure out how much distance we have between these two.
yeah, I'm trying to find a good picture to illustrate that. Okay, this is probably the best. So, again, this is Stonebriar Road. This section, there are homes here, but this home will have about a 40 to 50-foot wide landscape buffer that will have that new berm. It'll then have Stonebriar Road, which is about a 25-foot wide. So there's behind the lot, not behind the home, behind the lot, there's 75 feet before you get to the property, of which will be the Groves property, which would be the closest. Their home, I don't know for sure they're here, but it's probably 100 feet into their property. Yes, sir.
Approximately 170 feet from the road.
To the Groves? Okay,
So
so
there's-
170 feet from the, and then the closest home is the Taylor home, where we're proposing our single-story homes as he requested. Again, that's over 100 feet from the homes. It's probably 150 feet from the back of the homes to his home. Oh, 190 feet.
And that's where a berm would be as well. That's where a berm would be as well, correct?
So we are not proposing a berm on this section.
Oh, that's right. That's the Taylor letter.
That's the Taylor letter, yes. He was the one that said the berm were viable. We didn't feel like a berm was viable in the backyards of a already exceedingly deep lot.
But stated a fence would be fine.
A fence, yes.
All right, thank you.
How large, mature is that landscaping behind the Taylor home? I mean, it looks like there's
Very, I
already
mean, it's been there for, I don't know if it was the first home built in the subdivision, but it
If you
was,
built a berm, would they be able to see the berm?
I don't know, honestly. I've not been in his backyard, but there's a lot of landscaping and trees there.
Okay.
I don't believe I can say right here where we will continue the berm in this area, because there's a large amount of trees there. You won't be able to see the berm through those trees. But that's bordering common area on Rivermore, so we'll continue the berm in that area. That's at the bend in the road.
Okay. Any further questions of the applicant?
Mayor
Ms. Mayor,
Chadwick. Sorry, I have one.
Councilman?
Regarding this, children and school buses, do they go into the private, like, do school buses, do they go in for the private streets? Do they drive in to pick up children? Or would they all be picked up out, like, on Joplin Road?
I haven't asked this specific school bus company,
Mhm.
but some do and some don't, just depends on the company.
So the.
Anybody know?
Well, yeah, they'll pick up, typically they'll pick them up in the entrance of the subdivision now. Yeah. So it's gonna depend on, and I'm gonna tell you, it's all gonna depend on the year and the school district and the kids and stuff. So that's gonna be a hard thing to try to dictate.
Right, and so I guess looking at that entry point, if we have children waiting there at that entry point, do we need to, how wide is that street?
Overall, well, each section of asphalt is about 20 feet wide.
40
And
foot.
so it's 40 feet wide with a island in the middle. That's another, I think it was 10 or 15 feet wide. So the section is pretty large. I would hope that the
And then
bus would come down that street,
plus the sidewalk.
plus the sidewalk.
Sidewalk
yes.
there.
And the sidewalks are detached 5-foot sidewalks.
Okay. So that should be safe for children to wait there.
I would
Okay,
hope.
thank
But
you.
again, I mean, garbage trucks are gonna go down private street, the mail lady's gonna go down the private street, mailman, doesn't have to be. But I would see that, I heard a neighbor say the school bus goes down Stonebriar Road and it's a private street.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions of the applicant?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys?
so I don't recall, is there actually a street light at the entrance to the subdivision?
If required, yeah, there should be. There'll be lighting at the entrance. There needs to be lighting up on Joplin Road.
Okay, and I guess
Are you talking about at Stonebriar or at our proposed subdivision?
I'm talking about your proposed project.
There would be a light at the entrance.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure it's all on the.
I don't
plan,
know if
but-
it's shown on the plan.
And my only concern is I'm just trying to go off of Councilman Solomonson's question because it is a likely place for kids to wait. Just want to make sure they've got a light.
If there's not a light shown on the plan, we'll make sure there is a light shown on the plan.
And then, Mr. Mayor, I have some questions for staff, but I may have more questions for the applicant afterwards.
So let's ask staff and keep applicant up. He's got questions for you.
So we've got a couple of lists here, one from the HOA, one from the applicant that are pretty similar. And which of these items, in your opinion, and we may get Chris involved here, do you think we can put in a development agreement and which ones can we not put in a development agreement? I'm contemplating, for instance, items 1 through 4 and 8 through 14.
Putting them in?
Putting in the development agreement. 7's already part of our ordinance.
What's 5 and 6?
Yes, that I would agree with that list. And then I've got a couple of other conditions when you're ready that we can discuss.
So what's 5 and 6?
5 is private streets, which if we approve that, it doesn't
Oh,
need to be in
sure.
the DA.
Okay.
The other's the gated committee with the access point on Whitecap Creek, which is covered, I think, in some of these other easement requirements and what the fire department's requiring.
Okay.
Yes.
So you believe all of those can be in the DA?
Yes.
Okay, and then as a condition of approval, the HOA's asked for some indemnification, hold harmless, which I think we can put in the conditions of approval, that would be in the CCNRs. And then, and this may be a question for Chris, can we have them put something in the CCNRs that requires their HOA to carry liability insurance?
Liability, excuse me, liability insurance in case they go through the other one using the emergency access. That's what you're talking about
Correct,
specifically.
yeah.
Those are good comments. I'm just trying to think, I don't know, it's a little hard to, I mean, as a condition of approval, to the extent they can get the insurance, I don't know. I mean, if their insurance company says, well, we're not, it's an emergency, we're not going to indemnify that. We can't guarantee that people that are scared for their lives are running through somebody else's neighborhood, we're going to pay for all of that. especially as the HOA, because the HOA doesn't necessarily insure all the individual homeowners. They'll insure the organization, they'll insure the board, they'll insure the common area. It could certainly require that they look into it, and if they can get it, then great, it should be included, but I don't know enough about the insurance world to know if an HOA is gonna say, yeah, we're gonna indemnify any of our neighbors that happen to drive through a required emergency access, most likely directed by emergency services. And then as the HOA, we're gonna pay for all those, the insurer for the HOA, we're gonna pay for all those damages. I don't know what that would cost. I don't know even know if that coverage is available. So not knowing that, I'm a little hesitant to just mandate it as part of a condition of approval, meaning that no insurance, no development. But I think you could make it a condition of approval that they at least look into it. And if it is available, then they, cover that. But I don't even know if Mr. Amar's even had a chance to take a look at that or not. But anyway, where it's, I'm gonna be a little hesitant making it a mandated condition. I guess I'd say it that way.
Okay.
I understand the concerns from the neighbors and how they want to be covered if their streets are being used, but I'm just not sure how that's all gonna work out. I think Kevin indicated that they would work through that and try to find a solution. But as far as making it a conditional approval that insurance coverage be there,
Could we make it a
So
condition of
possible.
approval that, that we want them to work with Stonebriar? And if it becomes feasible, that they add that as a requirement into their CCNRs? That it would be binding through the CCNR process on the future homeowners.
Generally, yes. Who determines if it's feasible? So Stonebriar says, well, yeah, you can get it. It's gonna cost you guys, just wild number, but it's gonna cost your HOA, $40,000 a year for coverage to cover all these homes coming through. So it's feasible, it's there. And the HOA is saying, we're not paying for that. It's not feasible. I don't know who makes that call. I think the applicant has indicated they're willing to try to work through it. And I think that, but as you know, we've talked about this on other projects, on types of things like this. I always struggle with tying an application to,
Me too, that's why I'm asking.
yeah,
you.
where an applicant can say, basically kind of has control over whether conditions met or not. I'd prefer if there's a condition that there's a reasonable standard that everybody recognizes. And if you meet the standard, you do it. If you can't meet the standard, you don't. And I'm just not sure what that would look like in this context.
Okay. You have more questions to staff? Or of the applicant?
Yeah, so to address his concern about what would be reasonable, what would you consider reasonable?
I'm not an insurance agent. I've never checked into this particular question. I think this is a unique situation because we're looking for emergency access. They're looking for us to get access on their property to maintain our berm. They're driving vehicles next to our property. So I think there's going to be some unique situations where we just have to work together to figure out how do we indemnify each other, because they don't want us to, or our residents to get harmed on their property and cause a liability. I don't want their residents to get harmed on my property or the HOA's property in the case of the berm and cause a liability issue. So it's going to be something that if we can easily indemnify each other, of course we'll do that. And I'm sure the insurance companies have worked through this somewhere. I just don't, I feel like I'm not really answering your question because I don't have an answer for it.
So if we put in the conditions of approval that you will work with the Stonebriar HOA to put together a mutual indemnification agreement and seek to find, let's say adequate insurance that, see, and here's that standard again.
A reasonable.
Why would we get involved and try to broker any of this?
I'm trying to put a condition to ask them to go broker it between
Right, but-
themselves. So,
There's nothing in our code or in our charter that requires us to mediate that. And this is a situation I don't feel like we should get involved in, quite frankly.
Okay, and we can disagree on that. So.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Any further questions of the applicant or
I think that's all I've got for now,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else before we have them sit? Ms. Jennifer, David? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll close the public hearing at this point and go on to council deliberations. Somebody break the ice.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys.
oh, I have a long list here. So I guess what I'd like to do is start by taking the mutually agreed upon conditions that the HOA and the developer have agreed to and add from this list, the developer's list, items number 1 through 4 and 8 through 14 to the development agreement with a couple modifications. Number 13, the gravel extraction to be limited to no more than 18 months from start of extraction. So once they mobilize, we're not going to start today. And that the berm is to be undulating 6 to 8 feet tall. What else we have in here? Side yard setbacks and development. So they're asking for 5 feet. I know the code for R2 says 10, but then I look in the comprehensive plan, and this is where it gets really foggy. So under 8.2.3 in the comp plan, under estate residential, it reads, clustering is encouraged to preserve open space. A density bonus may be considered as if open space is preserved and land of at least 40% of additional preserved open space is developable. And I'm thinking that they've kind of met that hurdle of clustering. And we've talked about as a council that we're encouraging clustering. Now somebody comes, they want clustering, but if you're going to cluster, you got to be a little closer together. So now I'm at a place where, I think we have to ask ourselves, when we said that we want to encourage clustering, did we mean that? And if we did, then I think we have to have a serious conversation about the 5 foot per floor setback.
Where do you see clustering in this plan?
I think when you talk about open space way greater than 40%, I think the whole plan represents clustering. So,
I guess we can disagree.
yes, we can.
I see distribution. I don't see clustering.
Well, I suppose that depends on your definition of clustering, but to me, when you're providing, over 40% open space, that meets my definition and my hurdle for clustering.
Well, and I'll go back to some of the comments that you've made in previous meetings around, how we consider ponds and that in the open space. There's a significant area of ponds in here, and yeah, that is open space for sure. But typically that's looked at just a little bit differently. When I think of clustering, I would expect to see large tracts of land and clustering, and the densities that are contemplated in that include things like multifamily housing and smaller homes, clustered together as well. So typically when you have larger homes and larger lots, you're not going to see that sort of thing. So I guess just, again, two perspectives, right?
And I think what I'd like to do is get the perspective of our other two counselors on that specific topic. But
Sure.
before we do that, I'd like to move on with the rest of my list. Let's see. On the condition of approvals that came in the staff report, condition of approval number 15 says that the postmaster letter is going to come before approval of the final plat. And I guess what I'm trying to do is respect our preliminary plat process and say, can we get the postmaster letter before we do the final signature, before staff and the mayor does their final signature on the preliminary plat?
There's no signature on the preliminary plat. So,
No, excuse me, not on the plat, but before it comes back to the council for the ordinance and all that, I just want to respect the process that we've established, because if it's not important, then let's not do it.
I think the problem is, and the applicant stated this, is we're working with the Meridian post office
Yeah.
and not the Eagle or not the Star, which Mel's really good at getting us those
Yeah, he
letters.
is.
We transmitted a letter to Meridian Post and they didn't respond. So I think we can make it a condition that prior to final plat, we get that.
Okay, and then I think if we're gonna do that, we need to revisit whether that's gonna be a requirement for our preliminary plat applications.
We can do that.
Okay. I'd also like to add to the development agreement that we're going to have a public easement that runs along Highway 16 on the pathway there to furnish access onto the state of Idaho lands. No other pathway, just that one pathway. And if you want to sign the rest of it as private, by all means do that.
Mr. Mayor and Council Member Keys, do you want to make that a sportsman access?
I'd like to make it a public access.
Okay.
ACHD requirements, let's see, I gotta go back to this. Back to,
You got any more papers over there you gotta look at?
oh, yeah. No, I was looking at, and maybe Sean, maybe you can find this faster than I can, but on the conditions of approval from the city, I made a note here that approval number 5 needs to be amended because of the ACHD requirements, but I don't have that approval right in front of me right now. And it's a big packet.
Did you find it?
Okay, yeah, I did find it. Okay, so in the condition of approval, there was a requirement that they follow the requirements that were in the ACHD preliminary report, but in the final report, they were frankly much more extensive, and I want to make sure that condition number 5 is amended accordingly.
Do you want it to just state they meet the
The final
requirements of
report.
ACHD's final report?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And then condition number 22. Okay. I think I'm okay with that one the way it is. I was contemplating whether or not that's about putting in the HDPE pipe for fiber, if that should be added to the DA. I guess I'm okay with that as a condition, actually.
We just make it a condition of the plat. But we could do both if you want it on the DA.
Okay, well, okay, let's put it in the DA. I like the DA because it's enforceable on subsequent landowners if the zombie apocalypse happens and they end up with a subsequent landowner.
Did you get them all?
So, yeah, that's where I'm at. And again, I'd like to
Light
hear.
at the entrance of the subdivision?
Yeah, well, and I'd like to hear the thoughts from the rest of the council about the setbacks and the clustering and
I'd be happy
where
to
we go
share
on
that.
that. So-
Councilman Hershey?
Alrighty. First off, I want to address, I heard that if everybody had to exit it once, it would plug it up. Well, if everybody had to exit it once, that means the entire city of Star and probably half the state of Idaho is trying to exit at the same time. It's going to be a mess. Can't fix that. And it might be zombies. I don't know. I am prepared for that, though. I'm just going to sit on my roof and have a good time. But until they get me. So I've thought about it. So anyway, here's what I say. This is by far and away not clustering to me at all. It's just compact. But here's where I'm thinking. First off, I look at a subdivision that comes in that's existing next to one that already is there. And my main concerns are the borders. And I believe with these berms, trees, landscaping and all that, we're addressing that very well. The inside, yes, the setbacks would be 5 feet for some of these areas. And most of these look like they're on a cul-de-sac anyway. So in all reality, you're going to get some space. And another thing is it's gated. Let's not forget it's gated. Gated means me, anyone else that doesn't live there, ain't getting in without being invited. So therefore, I can drive down Highway 16 and see maybe a few houses of this thing, and I'm going to be going exactly 65 in every speed. Unless there's zombies, right? But or going to be going down Joplin, and you're going to barely see any subdivision there as well. So therefore, because the exterior, which is the most critical to me when it comes to this, and the fact that it is an R 1.923-ish, I'm actually okay with the setbacks they propose, because anyone that wants to live there can see the map, can see what they're going to get into, and it really is only going to affect them and their neighbors. Other than that, every condition stated, totally with you on that. But I don't think it's clustering, and the single point of entry is a concern to me. However, once again, it's a gated community, therefore, and with that median they said they had, if something was to happen there, it does not create a single point of failure. It has a good chance of having a way to get around. So with all the conditions that were stated, I'm actually for this as is.
Okay, Councilwoman?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, so to me, this is not clustering either. Seems like the houses are pretty much on the same size lots throughout the neighborhood, so that doesn't fit my definition of a cluster. Like if it was more dense, in the center, smaller lots, then that would be clustering. But I think the setbacks that they have proposed here, because of the open space, that, it fits this development and this, this project. I agree. I think, people moving in here, they know what they're getting when they move in with a 5-foot setback. I think that, well, for some, they may want more space. That isn't necessarily what everyone wants. For a retired couple, they might want less yard space to maintain. And so that smaller side, setback works for them. So I'm okay with what they have, what they're asking for here. I think that the project meets, our comprehensive plan, and I'm fine with the conditions that you have outlined. But I do have one change, item number 11 in his list. I believe it should be blocks 19 through 28 that are single-story homes. So overall, I am in support of this project.
Did you get that? That was discussed up here, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further comments, discussion, motions,
Mayor Chadwick,
emotions? Yes, sir.
you want it?
No emotions. Had a lot of those.
Okay, because I'll defer. I think Councilman Hershey and Councilwoman Salmonson make a reasonable argument for the setbacks as requested. If people want to live in a 5-foot setback, let them. I'm shocked that not everybody feels the same way I do. No, I'm just
I'll
kidding.
be quiet.
I'm just kidding. So cool. I am curious on the gravel extraction. I do think it's reasonable to allow for 2 years from start of extraction versus 18 months. So I think that's a really great compromise still off of 5 years. And I am also good with, I think the other conditions as described herein today, although accepting any sort of condition around trying to broker an insurance compromise. So.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion or more further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys?
so I'm saddened that Councilman Nielsen didn't find my argument reasonable. But having said that, I will modify my own thinking around what the council's sense of clustering is. So I appreciate that. I believe that the applicant, frankly, is going to bring an amazing project to STAR. So thank you guys for doing that. STAR is really trying to raise the bar higher and higher here, and I think you guys will help with that. I think that some compromises have been made to protect our new neighbors in Stonebriar, and thank you guys for being here, and again, welcome to STAR. And on that note, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this application with all of the conditions and additions to the development agreement that we've discussed. So, do we need to go through all those again?
No, I've got it. You did add the light at the entrance,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, please.
Okay, we got a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mayor
Yes,
Chadwick.
Councilman Nielsen.
So I would just briefly like to address the Garrett's. I don't know if anybody talked with them about, or talked about the concerns they brought up and just maybe commiserate with you for a little bit. You know, seeing fields and open space develop into subdivisions is never easy. And, you know, as an individual who grew up in an agricultural community on lots of land myself, it's hard to watch it happen. But here we are, we're a city, and according to state law, we plan for urban and urban-like development. And I'm thrilled that for the last 30 years, you got to have that view of your neighbor's property out there. But it is property owned by other folks, and these are the rights that they have to exercise that. So hopefully you can stick around in our community, but I understand your sentiment about, you know, needing to leave as well to, you know, to find that value. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that.
Okay, we got a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
Just to make sure that extra berm was addressed, correct? The 6 to 8 feet beyond?
The 6 to 8 foot.
Okay,
yeah.
just making sure that's in there. I
Yeah.
think that's important.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. All right. Let's move on to, excuse me? Oh, it shouldn't take very long on this one. We'll move on to item E, the appointment of Mr. Steve Green to the ACHD Pedestrian Advisory Group.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys.
make a motion that we approve Mr. Steve Green to the ACHD Pedestrian Advisory Group.
second,
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Item F, the development agreement modification for River Creek subdivision. Sean, can you discuss that for everybody? What we're doing?
Yes.
Yes, you were,
sorry.
Sean.
River Creek, yes. When I originally did the conditions for that development agreement regarding the flood plain, we worked with our flood coordinator and had some language. We've modified that. I did put that in the report, the slight modification to allow the phasing of that development while still meeting the requirements of our flood administrator.
Okay. Oh, it's right here. This is it right here, right?
Yep.
Yep. Do you guys have any questions relating to that change?
One more.
Okay, we'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
6F,
6F.
I'll second it.
the development agreement modification for River Creek subdivision. We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? That motion carries. Item H, the action on development agreement for Wild Rice subdivision.
Try to dispense those rules, don't we?
No, this is, no, not,
This is not an ordinance, it's just a development.
it's just a
agreement.
development agreement,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry,
Yep, so it's just an
forget the rules.
agreement and approval.
Any motions there to approve the development agreement?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the development agreement for Wild Rice subdivision.
Okay, we got a motion and a second.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Question, comments, anything? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Item I, ordinance 338, the Lauren Estate subdivision annexation and development agreement.
Mr. Mayor, staff requests that be removed from the agenda.
Oh, ordinance 338?
Yep.
Okay, We'll remove, I don't have to do a motion or anything for that, do I?
No, it's not.
No, okay, we'll remove item I from the agenda, so we're gonna move down to reports. Elected officials, Mr. Kevin Nielsen, anything?
None to report, Mayor.
Okay, Councilwoman?
Had an air quality board meeting yesterday. I actually went to the Compass building and I was one of just a handful that the rest were on Zoom, but it was nice. I've only actually been to the meeting because once I was elected or appointed to that board, COVID hit. And so we have been doing it all virtually for a year and a half. And so I'm excited to get back in the room with the people and get to know them more. And then the Parks and Beautification Committee, he gave his report. I don't think I have anything else.
Okay, Councilman Hershey?
All my meetings are early next month. I got nothing to report for right now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilman Keys?
Mr. Mayor, I did attend the Star Sewer and Water board meeting here last week. And they tell me that the South Star lift station potentially is still on track for October, but because of the water and some other issues they've been fighting, it's probably more likely to be November. And the West Star lift station is right now is tentatively scheduled to go live about a year from now. Let's see, Transportation Committee stuff, we covered off on that. And other than that, I did attend the Area of Impact meeting with the Canyon County Board of Commissioners today with you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll allow you to cover off on that if you'd like.
Either way, it doesn't matter.
Okay. And then I did really enjoy the presentation of the Compass tool. And I think that that's something that could potentially be a basis to adopt finally an adequate public facilities ordinance for STAR. But I think what I'd like to do is let's bring the tool on board, use it for 6 months, roll it around our mouth, see how it works, and then take that conversation up again.
Okay. I just want to let you guys know, if you haven't heard yet, and I worked my butt off on getting Mr. Matt Clifford as our new sheriff in town. He's the new sheriff in town. He's an awesome officer. He came from as a chief out of Eagle. So that's a good news for us here. We do have the impact fee stuff. I think you talked about that a little bit earlier in the report coming up here. And is it at the end of August?
I think it's August 3rd.
August 3rd. Is it August 3rd? Jacob, do you know? August 3rd. For the impact fees for Canyon Highway District 4 on the Canyon County side, which is a good step forward. I have staff setting up meetings for me. We're talking about this adequate public facilities ordinance. We have meetings being set up with all the different agencies so I can get some information and data for everybody relating to that. As far as what I just want data. I want info. I want what's the capital improvement plans that we have? What's their plans for the future? What's our capacities? I mean, with all this stuff, schools, sewer, water, power, gas. We're talking to every one of these guys just to kind of get an idea of where we stand right now. So the committee of 9 is what we're calling this area of impact with Canyon County. It actually went pretty decent today. That was our very first meeting. We have another meeting coming up at the end of August, I believe. Middleton was there in force on this one, but Mayor Rule stated in there that they would follow along with what we agreed upon in our committee of 9, which was kind of an interesting statement there. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm too excited about this compost tool. It's something I think you were working on this, Ms. Jennifer, with them for a while. And I think it could be a good tool for us to assess how we move forward here in the city. So staff, Chief, do you got anything?
Mayor, Council, Jake Vogt, Star Chief of Police. I wanted to update the council and mayor on some internal transfers, department-wise, that's going to affect us. Your current persons crime detective is Neil Daigle. He's been with us about 2.5 years. He is receiving not really a promotion, but additional assignment up at Barrister, where he'll be a general detective, and he'll also be trained as a polygrapher. And so it'd be a nice advancement in his career. So he'll be transferring up to our main station at Barrister. To replace him will be Detective Ashley Turner, who currently is we have 2 domestic violence detectives out of the main campus that handles all the county. She is one of those 2. So she'll bring some good experience with that as a specialty, but also general persons crimes. And that'll be happening in the next couple weeks. When she gets on board, I'll get her into a council meeting so I can introduce you and so you can put a face to a name. And other than that, that's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. No bee stings? He had the fattest lip known to man.
Yeah, so I did spend the last week on vacation in the Redwoods, Northern California, beautiful. But the day before, get the camper all loaded up and and I'm very allergic to bees. I get stung by yellow jacket right on the lip about 12 hours before we left, and it was as big as it can get. So I started off the vacation with that.
Awesome.
So that was not fun, but I do have pictures I'll show off the record.
Yes, right.
Yes.
At least it wasn't a murder hornet. Sean, Mr. Jacob? If you're gonna speak, though, you gotta speak in my mic.
So we've started the Muni stuff. Muni's going as of like today. Not everything is live yet, but we're there.
Oh,
They've
good.
gotten probably 95% of our code already on their piece, so it should be pretty easy to self-edit. Black Mountain has been ordered. They've told me possibly February instead of like April, May, so we're good.
Perfect. Thank you. Chris? Nothing? All right. With no more on our agenda, I call this meeting